Chapter 76, Evan's preparations before the trial. Boss. Don't. After hearing what the chief guard said, the guards burst into tears and shouted unwillingly. Go. This is an order. The chief guard turned around and looked at the giant roaring. Even he had no confidence to delay. How long would it take for the monster in front of him to kill him? The consequences of his action was unimaginable. However, it was precisely this moment of turning around that the giant seemed to have found an opportunity, and he moved. Boom! The giant swung his huge wooden club, and with the howling wind, he swung it towards the chief of the guard who was facing him, and dared to lose his mind for a short time. Ahem! The chief of the guard's face changed when he heard the whistling of the wind. In his haste, he had no time to defend himself. He was hit by the giant's stick and fell to his knees. Damn it! It's obvious that distraction is the last thing you should do in a battle. I actually made such a low-level mistake, it's really infuriating. Now I'm finished. The chief guard's body went numb. He looked at the giant in front of him and sighed. He seemed to have seen his own destiny. Captain! Damn! We have to fight. As for the guards behind the chief guard, seeing the huge giant and the injured captain, they drew their weapons one after another, preparing to fight the giant to the death. Idiot, I told you not to come here. Take miss and run away. The chief guard looked at the guards who were about to die, and his expression panicked. The most taboo thing for a guard is being coward, so he had to fight to protect his miss. Although he knew that his subordinate were here for him, but in terms of duties, these idiots were all unqualified. The duty of the guard was to calmly judge the risk, avoid the risk, and escape with the boss. Roar! Just as the chief guard was roaring, the wild giant seemed to be angry. He seemed to regard the chief guard's roar as a provocation to him. Do not! The guards looked at the scene in front of them, their eyes were red, they were heartbroken but they were unable to stop it. Swoosh! Just as the chief guard had resigned to his fate, and the group of novice guards were roaring helplessly, a golden light shone. It passed directly through the giant's chest, and then landed on a high mountain in the distance. Boom! Accompanied by a roar, the peak of the high mountain disappeared without a trace in an instant. Plop! At the same time, accompanied by a roar, the majestic giant who was originally holding a wooden club lost his vital signs in an instant, and fell towards the head of the guard below him, pressing the head of the guard under him. Captain! Although the group of novice guards didn't know what happened, when they saw the giant's body hit the body of the chief guard, they immediately became nervous and shouted. No, I'm fine. Just when the novice guards didn't know how the chief guard was doing and what happened, the group of novice guards heard the chief guard's voice. A middle-aged man stained red with blood emerged from the giant's body. That man is the chief of guards. Captain! Captain killed the giant. A group of guards were shocked when they saw the chief of the guard who was stained red with blood, and they shouted excitedly in the next second. If their captain can even kill that kind of monster-like giant, then their guards won't go up? It's a pity what they don't know is that at this moment, the chief guard is already thinking about driving all of them back to retrain. No, I didn't do it. The chief of the guard shook his head after listening to the words of the subordinates. He was stunned when he saw the giant fall towards him. Just when he thought he was going to die, he realized that the giant's chest had unexpectedly turned. There was a big hole more than 2 meters wide, and his body just passed through the middle of that big hole. Apart from being splashed with the blood of a giant, he didn't suffer any injuries. As for how the giant died, the chief guard vaguely seemed to see a golden light flashing. The chief guard guessed that it must have something to do with the sudden flashing golden light. Successful crusade against wild giants. Just as the chief guard and the other guards were at a loss, there seemed to be a voice in the sky. When all the guards looked in the direction of the sound, their pupils shrank suddenly. Just because they saw a scene that they will never forget in their lifetime. Countless golden rays of light converging, first the mouth, hands, then half the body, and then the whole body. In the blink of an eye, a young man formed of golden rays of light stood in the sky like this. Your Excellency is... The chief guard looked at the young man, and he knew in his heart that the young man in front of him was definitely a top mage on Ishgar, at least an S-class mage of the Legal Guild, or even one of the 10 wizard saints. Hey! The young man seemed to have noticed the guards. He stretched out his fingers and pointed at the guards who hit the rock mass and bled profusely. His lips moved slightly, heal. As 2 additional spells were released from the boy's fingertips. The 5 soldiers who were blown away by the giant's stick before, and the chief of the guard who had suffered the giant's blow, were all shaken, and they recovered in a blink of an eye. It's so amazing. After the chief guard felt his restored body, he looked at the boy in the air with shock in his eyes. The boy's additional magic was called a miracle. The front is very dangerous, and your strength is not enough, so go back wherever you came from. After the boy finished speaking, without giving the guards a chance to speak, he turned into a golden light and disappeared into the sky in a blink of an eye. Not long after the boy left, the small curtain on the window of the carriage protected by the guards was gently pulled up, revealing a young girl with an exquisite face, but the most striking thing was the short emerald hair of the girl. Am I, Miss? Sorry for shocking you. It's the incompetence of the subordinates. When the chief guard saw the girl, he immediately moved in front of him, knelt down on one knee, and sincerely apologized. Who's that person? The girl ignored the chief guard's apology, but looked at the sky and asked. Although I don't know who he is, I can recognize the symbol on the back of that boy's hand. It is the symbol of the Fairy Tale Guild. According to my guess, he is probably the mage of fairy tale who has become famous in the mainland recently, Evan the Collapsing Star. The chief guard thought for a while before speaking softly. Is it Evan the Collapsing Star from Fairy Tale? I remember the name. Hearing this, the girl murmured Evan's name softly. The chief guard looked at the girl with twinkling eyes, and slowly breathed a sigh of relief. The identity of the girl in front of him was beyond words. If something happened, it would not only be his death, but the entire guard team would also die together. At the same time, the chief guard decided to strengthen the education of these young guards in the future. We must let this group of guards know that the job of the guards is to protect. Whenever they encounter danger, they must protect their boss and get out of the danger, instead of acting recklessly. Fortunately, they met a top mage on the mainland today when they could barely escaped, but next time they might not have such good luck. Thinking of this, the middle-aged chief guard frowned. A few days later, Evan, who traveled abroad for almost a month, returned to the Fairy Tale Guild. In just 1 month, he has completed 1 SS class quest, 9 S class quests, and 43 A class quests. These 53 missions, without exception, were all crusade missions. As for why it took Evan a month to complete only 53 quests, it wasn't that he could only do 53 missions. This was far from his limit, but because there were only so many quests in Fairy Tale, Evan has been backlogging Fairy Tale for a year. The rest of the missions were all quests that Evan despises and require a lot of time, such as investigation quests, ancient text translation quests, or some weird ones, such as going to the theater to perform, drawing pictures for others, helping the flower shop to investigate the reason why the flowers withered, etc., all kinds of quests that Evan couldn't understand. Counting the 10-year medal he obtained for the crusade against Deliera, the S-class medal he obtained for the crusade quest he completed with Guildarts, and the SS medal he obtained for the Fairy Tale 24 Hours Endurance Road Race, he now had 1 10-year medal, 2 SS class medals, 2 S-class medals, and 43 A-class medals. Evan didn't hesitate much, and directly merged the 43 A-class medals into 4 S-class medals and 3 A-class medals, so that he had a total of 14 S-class medals, and then he added 10 S-class medals, combined it into 1 SS class medals. In this way, he has a full 3 SS class medals. Evan looked at the medals in front of her, and directly used the 3 SS class medals to upgrade. 3 SS class medals were used to upgrade Evan's magic power, holder magic, and caster magic respectively. In an instant, these 3 abilities of Evan went from level 8 to level 9. That is to say, in just a short moment, these 3 abilities of Evan directly came to the level of the 4 heavenly kings of Ishgar, and the last 3, that is, the inhuman level. Then Evan used his 10-year medal and directly upgraded his magic power to level 10. In a blink of an eye, Evan's magic power has directly reached the level of the Spriggan 12. In terms of magic power, even if he is placed in the west, Evan can still be selected as one of the Spriggan 12 of Ziref personal guardian. Yes, although it is only at the lower level of the Spriggan 12, in terms of comprehensiveness, apart from the gap between Evan and the Spriggan 12 in magic, in other aspects he was stronger than the Spriggan 12. But no matter what, the current Evan is strong and powerful man, not only in the Ishgar, but also in the whole world, including the West, and the Alvarez Empire founded by Ziref. Then, Evan upgraded his remaining 4 S-class medals and upgraded all his resistance to level 8. In an instant, Evan's data template was corrected to Character, Evan. Physique, special constitution, can eat multiple devil fruits. Haki. Observation Haki, LV8, plus. Armament Haki, LV8, plus. Conqueror's Haki, LV8, plus. Devil Fruit. Zoan, Fish Fruit, Phantom Beast, Blue Dragon Form, LV8, plus. Paramecia, Press Fruits, LV8, plus. Logia, Glint Fruit, LV8 plus. Physique. Swordsmanship, LV8, plus. Chapter 77, Not Just for Candidates. Early morning. In the Fairy Tale Guild. The atmosphere of this day is extraordinarily serious. Makarov, the third guild mater of Fairy Tale, was wearing a cloak, standing on the podium in the hall, looking seriously at the mage of Fairy Tale below him. Is it my illusion? It feels like there are more people coming back today than during the Harvest Festival. Grey and Lion stood among the crowd, looking around. The Fairy Tale mage that covered the hall murmured softly. Because there are some people who have been practicing outside, they didn't even come back during the Harvest Festival. Everyone has tried their best for the S-Class Mage promotion trial. Macau stood beside Grey and Lion, preaching. It seems that everyone is more serious about the S-Class Mage promotion trial than I imagined. After hearing what Macau said, Grey's face became a little more serious. He only now understands the significance of the S-Class Mage promotion trial. The S-Class Mage promotion trial is a grand event that mere mages will never be able to participate in. Ahem. Since everyone is here, I think you all know what I'm going to say next, and you probably can't wait any longer. Then here I am, announcing the candidates for this S-Class Mage promotion trial. Makarov looked at the people below him with a serious face after he was almost done with the people coming. He cleared his throat and began to recall the names of the participants in this year's Fairy Tale S-Class Mage promotion trial. First of all, the first candidate to participate in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. Let us congratulate Evan Belzarian, who just joined this year. The first person in Makarov's S-Class Mage promotion trial list this year is Evan. It's Evan. Although I'm very unwilling. But since it's Evan, there's nothing I can do. Yeah. All the mages in the guild showed relieved expressions when they heard that Evan was going to participate in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. After all, Evan's achievements are based on real fights, and the mage of Fairy Tale all know Evan's strength in their hearts. Even now that Makarov directly grants Evan the S-Class Mage certification, the members of Fairy Tale will not say anything, they will only take it for granted. After hearing Makarov's words, Evan looked extremely calm, and he didn't seem to feel any surprise, and stood on the podium. For him, he is bound to win the S-Class Mage promotion trial this time. Following that, the second person to participate in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial is also a newcomer who just joined this year. Once he joins the membership, he will immediately obtain the certification of the 10 Wizard Saints awarded by the Magic Council. It is Altair Milkovich. After Evan, Makarov read out the second candidate on the list to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial. It really is Altair. Hey! After all, she is the 10 Wizard Saints. Ha ha ha. To be honest, I'm a little lucky. I'm glad that I was not selected to participate in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. I don't have to compete with monsters like Evan or Altair. It's really great. Haha, that's right. It's really unfortunate for those who participated in the same S-Class Mage promotion trial, they are such monsters. Everyone has nothing to say about Altair's selection. After all, Altair is one of the 10 Wizard Saints together with their guild master. Great! Altair is selected. When Grey and Lion heard Makarov pronounce Altair's name, they immediately clapped hands in celebration. Next, the third and fourth candidates to participate in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial are Urza Belzarian and Laxus Driar. Immediately afterwards, before Grey and Lion ran to Altair to celebrate, everyone heard Makarov on the platform read out the third and fourth candidates for this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. Oh! It's Urza and Laxus. Haha, this is also expected, after all, they wiped out the entire Dark Guild alone. The group of mages showed no surprise when they heard that the third and fourth places to participate in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. The strength of Urza and Alaxis has been shown to everyone during the conflict between Fairy Tale and the Dark Guild's Dark Unicorn. With just 2 people, they can single out the opponent's entire guild's mage, plus the powerful combat power of the Dark Guild Master with the strength of an S-Class Bounty Offender. With the level of strength that 2 people can annihilate the Dark Guild, it is only natural for them to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial. Although Urza and Laxus are still very young, everyone in Fairy Tail will not doubt the strength of Urza and Laxus. Lion. Urza seems to be about the same age as us, and she's only about 10 years old this year. When we are 10 years old, we will also take part in the Fairy Tail S-Class Mage promotion trial just like Urza. As Altair's disciples, we must not lag behind. Grey looked at Urza, who was standing next to Makarov, who was a backup for an S-Class Mage, and his inner blood boiled. Yes. Lion nodded. He will continue to hone his strength, and one day, by virtue of his own strength, he will be able to obtain the ability to participate in Fairy Tail's S-Class Mage promotion trial. However, the people participating in the S-Class Mage promotion trial are exactly what Kana said: Evan, Laxus, Urza, and Altair. The 4 of them are really not bad at all. Sure enough, Kana, you are very good. Grey looked at Evan, Laxus, Urza, and Altair who were standing beside Makarov, and spoke softly to Kana who was standing not far from him. Ah. Hee. I'm just a little bit better at predicting. After listening to Grey's words, Kana turned her head and smiled. She clenched fists showed how unwilling she was not to be selected to participate in this S-Class Mage promotion trial. After all, Kana planned to reveal her identity to her father, Gildarts, after she became an S-Class Mage. Then there is the 5th candidate who will participate in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. Just when Kana was extremely unwilling, she heard Makarov who was standing on the podium speak again. Following Makarov's opening, the mages of Fairy Tail raised their heads one after another, their expressions filled with shock. Yes, originally they thought that there should only be 4 people participating in the S-Class Mage promotion trial this year, but now it seems. In this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial, apart from Evan, Laxus, Urza, and Altair, there is actually a 5th person participating. Chapter 78, 5th person, Irene Belzarian. Hey, who will be the 5th person to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial? You said, is there such a possibility that I am the 5th person to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial this year? Haha, you have a good idea. With your strength, you also want to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial? If you can go, then I can go too. A group of mages under the Fairy Tail stands had a heated discussion. At the same time, a group of Fairy Tail members who originally thought that they had no hope of participating in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial were eager to try and showed Makarov their strength. For them, participating in the S-Class Mage promotion trial this year, whether they can pass the assessment and obtain the S-Class Mage certification or not is not so important. In this way, even if they fail, no one will say anything about it. On the contrary, it is an honor to lose. After all, they have competed with Evan and Altair on the same stage. How face-saving is that? Just as the Fairy Tail mages under the stands were wondering, Evan and the others were also wondering in the stands. Who will the 5th person be? Grey? Lion? Kana? Macau or Wakaba? Grey, Lion, and Kana have good talents, but they are too young. It is too early to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial. The strength of Wakaba and Macau has reached the level where they can participate in A-Class quests alone, but there is still a long way to go before S-Class. Evan stood on the stand, looked at the mages below him, and kept shaking his head. In his opinion, there was still a long way to go for other people to join the S-Class Mage promotion trial. No matter who the 5th person is, I will beat him down unceremoniously. Laxus is surrounded by lightning. He has practiced hard this month. As for the 5th candidate to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial of Fairy Tail that Makarov said, he doesn't care at all. In the eyes of this S-Class Mage promotion trial, there is only one biggest enemy, and that is Evan. The 5th person to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial. Although Urza and Altair didn't speak, the thoughts in their minds were similar to Evan's. From their point of view, among the Fairy Tail members present, none of them had the ability to participate in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. Although everyone is very good, they are still too young. There is still a long way to go before the S-Class Mage promotion trial. The last person who won the S-Class Mage promotion trial this year may be a bit surprising, because this person is also a newcomer to the membership this year. At the same time, she was a blockbuster in this year's Fairy Tail 24 Hours Endurance Road Race and directly won the championship. Moreover, there is no one who has created Fairy Tail before, and it will be difficult for anyone to come later, the person who recorded the 24 hours endurance road race. Just as Evan and the others were confused, Makarov finally announced the last candidate to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial of Fairy Tale. No way. In fact, when Evan heard this, he had roughly guessed the identity of the last person to participate in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. Not only Evan, but almost everyone had vaguely guessed the identity of the fifth person. Yes. This person is Irene Belzarian. Seeing that the atmosphere was getting better, Makarov finally read out the name of the fifth person who participated in the S-Class Mage promotion trial, which was Irene Belzarian. As for why Makarov gave Irene such a high valuation, it is difficult to surpass her record in the 24 hours endurance road race. The main reason is that Makarov is old and his reaction speed and the speed of the timer will become slower and slower, so the record Irene created this year may be the record that the Fairy Tale 24 hours endurance road race will never surpass. What? Although Evan had already guessed the candidate, when he heard Makarov pronounce Irene's name, he was still stunned. He looked like he thought he heard it wrong. If Irene compete with them this year in the S-Class promotion trial, then they will be farts? Are you kidding? Besides, Irene, you haven't gone out to do missions in the year since you joined Fairy Tale, right? Except for the 24 hours endurance road race, you haven't shown your strength yet. How did you get selected? Evan was puzzled. In fact, there were a few people in the guild that were not convinced when they watched Irene won the 24 hours endurance road race, because they didn't even know how Irene won the championship. But even if Irene's was cancelled, the champion of Fairy Tale's first 24 hours endurance road race would directly fall on the second-placed Evan. Urza, who was originally fourth, will directly fill his place and rise to third place, so there will still be two Belzarian families in the top three, and this will not change. So all the mages of Fairy Tale didn't say anything, but now that Irene was selected by Makarov as a member of the S-Class Mage promotion trial, no matter how you look at it, it's really suspicious. Don't guess. I recommended it. Just when Evan was confused, he heard a voice, and what Evan saw was the hideous face of Gildarts. Gildarts looked at Evan with a mean smile and said, "What's the matter, kid? There is a high probability that you will miss the qualification of S-Class Mage promotion trial this year. Hey, what a pity. Ha 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 ha. What a pity, I want to laugh out loud. Uncle, it turned out that you did something good." Evan watched the laughing Gildarts' eyes twitch slightly. He now understands that the reason why Irene participated is entirely because of Gildarts' revenge. This narrow-minded man. Sure enough, Gildarts was just as the outside world said, except for his strength, he was a messy mage. Hey hey! Immediately afterwards, Evan saw Makarov, who was just like Gildarts, with a smirk on his face. Apparently, besides Gildarts' recommendation, Makarov was also indispensable for Irene to participate in this year's promotion trial. Irene's participation seems to be intentional by the old man Makarov. I can't help it. Evan. Irene's strength is indeed enough to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial. This is really not what I want to target you. Only Gildarts is targeting you. Makarov patted Evan's shoulder, and smiled, but Evan, maybe this is a good thing for you, after all, life should be bumpy and full of twists and turns. Only by overcoming setbacks can you go further. Hey hey hey! Guildmaster, it was obviously the candidate that the two of us were discussing at the same time, how could you put all the responsibility on me? Gildarts looked at the little old man in front of him who directly put all the blame on him, and sold Makarov backhandedly. This is fake friendship. Chapter 79, Irene. It's Mom. No wonder Laxus doesn't listen to you. Old man. The corners of Evan's eyes twitched slightly. After all, that one was known by Evan, who is still living in this world, Makarov's oldest grandson. At the same time, in an uninhabited forest, a boy with short black hair and wearing what looked like an aboriginal costume suddenly sneezed, "Aishu. Aishu. Strange. Does anyone still miss me in this era?" The boy scratched the ends of his hair, looked at the light blue sky, and muttered to himself. Surrounding the boy, there are small animals that suddenly died one after another without knowing when. No, that thing came again. The young man's face changed. He looked at the dead creatures and withered flowers and plants all over the ground, a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes, and then he continued to walk towards the dark and deserted forest. Perhaps only a place where there is no one and no life is the final destination of the boy. The other side. What's wrong, Evan? Is it surprising? The fifth person participating in the assessment is you, mother. Just as Evan was staring at Makarov, a gentle voice sounded in Evan's ear. Irene. Evan turned around, and saw Irene appearing behind Evan without knowing when. Speaking of which, how long has it been since our family of three traveled to the outer suburbs? I'm really looking forward to it. As Irene said, she pulled Evan and Urza into her arms, and spoke softly. It turns out that Irene regards Fairy Tale's S-Class Mage promotion trial as a trip. No, to be precise, it turns out that the two bastards, the Guildmaster and Guildarts, tricked Irene into participating in the assessment. But Irene was really deceived. Forget it, this kind of nervousness really fits Irene's personality, but... Evan's head turned very big, like a mess of paste, because as long as Irene participates, no matter what the assessment of the S-Class Mage promotion trial is this year, no one else will have any chance at all. Although Evan really wants to persuade Irene to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial next year. However, when Evan saw Irene's happy smile, he took back what he was about to say. Okay. Evan sighed at this thought. He would just take part in the assessment next year at worst. Anyway, the task of the S-Class Mage promotion trial has always been here, and it can only be completed once. It makes no difference if it is completed sooner or later. Besides, he himself has all the privileges of an S-Class Mage, so even if he doesn't have the title of an S-Class Mage, it's no big deal. No. Thinking like this, Evan suddenly thought of something, and he noticed something unusual. It stands to reason that the mission with Irene participating and with Irene as the opponent is definitely a 100 years quest. Even if everyone in Fairy Tale except Irene joins together, there is no chance of winning at all. My current strength is absolutely impossible to complete the quest. But my reward is at the 100 years quest, that is to say, there is a chance of winning. For a moment, Evan seemed to be aware of a blind spot. Haha. Thinking of this, Evan smiled lightly. Since you are going to travel, you should prepare more food and water. Evan looked at Irene and smiled, and said. Oh, that's right, I'll bake the bread when I get back today. Irene nodded after listening to Evan's words. During the conversation between the two, they already regarded this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial as a trip. But, that was not the case, in fact, it was Evan who was paralyzing Guildarts and Makarov. Guildarts and Makarov, who watched Evan and Irene talking normally, felt puzzled. Could it be that this brat gave up on this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial? Makarov looked at Evan and thought silently. No, absolutely not. This kid Evan has the most tricks. Makarov suddenly had an ominous premonition in his heart. Just wait and see. I am sure to win this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. Besides, who said that only one person can pass the annual assessment? As for the rules for the S-Class Mage promotion trial in the past, rules are meant to be broken. Guildmaster Makarov said that. The corners of Evan's mouth raised slightly, and he thought to himself. It would be so cool to deal with Makarov with what Makarov taught him. Besides, when it comes to the rules, you must know that according to the rules of Fairy Tale, if you are robbed by someone, you will be rewarded 100 times. Hiss. All of a sudden, Guildarts and Makarov gasped. They had an ominous premonition in their hearts. This year's S-Class Mage promotion trial might be extraordinarily lively. It's you guys who have to do things first. Evan stared at Guildarts and Makarov, his mind racing. Since Guildarts and Makarov are plotting against him together, don't blame him for being ruthless. He will make a big event this year. Irene, Evan, Urza. Will the whole family participate in this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial? Hey, isn't this too exaggerated? What a powerful family this is. Ha ha ha, this is simply a family of monsters. Isn't it? Ha ha ha. All the members of Fairy Tale looked at Irene, Evan and Urza on the stand at this moment, and couldn't help being shocked. It was the first time for them to see the spectacular sight of a mother bringing her son and daughter to participate in the Guild's S-Class Mage promotion trial together. You little devils, don't just know how to boo. Among the 5 mages participating in the S-Class Mage promotion trial this year, 4 of them are newcomers to the Guild. You bastards, also work hard for me. Don't chat, drink, and watch girls in the Guild all day long. Standing on the podium, Makarov spoke to the old members below him with a look of hatred. No. Guild Mater, what qualifications do you have to say about us? That's it. That's it. Aren't you drinking, chatting, and seeing girls in the guild all day long? Yet. I saw you and Kildas peeking in the girls' dormitory with my own eyes. Makarov's words seemed to arouse public outrage, and a group of members yelled at Makarov. That's right. That's right. He saw you and Gildarts peeking in the girls' dormitory with his own eyes. Hey. By the way, how did you see the guildmaster and Gildarts go to the girls' dormitory with your own eyes? No, to be precise, what are you doing near the girls' dormitory? Someone seems to have discovered a blind spot. Ah, it just happened to happen. The speaker lowered his head in shame. Beat this scumbag to death. The leader spoke, but the others rushed forward. Looking at the scene in front of him, Makarov and Gildarts looked at each other, and then took step back at the same time. Chapter 80, The Wind on the Roof will be noisy this year. Ahem. According to the usual practice this year, the S-Class Mage promotion trial will be held on Tenro Island. Those who have been named to participate in the S-Class Mage promotion trial will gather at the pier tomorrow morning. The meeting will be adjourned. Looking at the furious crowd, Makarov felt something was wrong. He immediately announced that before this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial, the mobilization of all members of the guild was completely over, and then he turned around and ran away. With him on the run was Gildarts. Oh, I was not selected this year. No need to be sad. Continue next year. Yes, we still won't be selected next year. It's too early to sigh now. If there are too many sighs this year, what will we do next year? There is nothing difficult in the world, as long as you are willing to try. Instead of daydreaming, how about we bet on who will pass this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial? Hey! Don't tell me, although I can't participate in the competition, but taking a gamble, I think I can do it. In an instant, a group of fairy tale mages turned into fun people. What? You said work hard to do the quests? For that kind of thing, you can work hard for at most 1 month in a year, and for the remaining 11 months, you can only live by chatting and spanking, so you can barely get by. In an instant, everyone in the Fairy Tale Guild began to discuss who would pass the S-Class Mage promotion trial this year. One thing to say, if you want to say who will become an S-Class Mage this year, it must be Evan. Let's say, including the Guild Master, who else besides Evan can fight with that Gildarts? Macau directly bet on Evan. This time Macau took out all the funds on his body, and the bet was full. Indeed. After hearing what Macau said, everyone nodded in unison. Just as Macau said, in their impression, there was no one in the entire guild who could compete with Gildarts except Evan. Yes, although Gildarts didn't try his best. Thinking of this, everyone bet together with Macau, betting on Evan. Hey! Wakaba had a cigarette holder in his mouth, and his brain was running fast. Not necessarily. Don't forget that there is another monster besides Evan this year. Wakaba looked mysterious. You mean Altair, who was selected as one of the 10 wizard saints? After listening to Wakaba's words, someone seemed to think of something and preached. Of course not. I'm talking about Evan's mother. Irene. I don't believe it anymore. No matter how powerful Evan is, can he still beat his mother? So I put all in on Irene. Wakaba has a cigarette in his mouth. He will win today, and he will definitely turn the tide. The money he lost to Macau last time, this time he will win back all the money with interest. Hiss. After hearing Wakaba's words, all the mages of Fairy Tale gasped. Yes, as Wakaba said, although Evan is a monster, but this year's assessment has a monster's mother. I bet on Irene too. Me too, me too. As soon as everyone counted, another group of people bet on Irene. Then I'll bet on Urza. Just when everyone thought that this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial would be divided between Irene or Evan, a discordant voice came out from among the crowd. This mage seemed to have a vicious vision, so he directly avoided Irene and Evan, and was betting on Urza. Why? Upon hearing this, the mage of Fairy Tale looked at this different and maverick person who chose to bet on Urza in puzzlement, and asked. I bet Evangelist. The mage gently pushing the myopia on the bridge of his nose, and preaching lightly. Hiss. Hearing the words, everyone gasped again, this person is right. This is too bad. Evan, Urza, and Irene may all pass this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. It's over, even if I am the god of gamblers, it's hard to bet. A group of Fairy Tale Mage began to struggle, feeling extremely troubled as to who would pass this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. Kana, who do you think will pass this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial? Gray and Lion looked at the noisy group of members. To be honest, they couldn't figure out who would pass this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. Although they really wanted to choose Altair to pass the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial, but right now it seemed impossible. After all, there was that invincible Evan there. That is to say, is there a possibility that many people will pass the assessment this year? Kana looked at the prediction displayed on the card in her hand, and spoke hesitantly. Many people have passed the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. Gray and Lion lost their mind when they heard this. The group of gamblers who had been calculating who would pass the test were all stunned after hearing Gray and Lion's words. Well, I was just talking casually. Kana put away her divination cards, and waved her hands towards everyone who looked over. Ha ha ha. In the next second, everyone in the guild laughed. Kana. It seems that you are still too young, what you said is impossible. That's right, that's right. In the history of our fairy tale, there has never been a case where multiple people passed the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial together. That's right. In previous year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial, either only one person passed, or no one passed. The old people in the guild suddenly burst out laughing. Their experience told them that it is impossible for many people to pass this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial together. Hee, yes. After all, my predictions may not be accurate. Kana smiled slightly when she heard the loud laughter of the members. Kana thought to herself, in previous year's fairy tale S-Class Mage Promotion Trial, there had never been a monster like Evan competing with a strong man who was awarded the title of 10 Wizard Saints by the Magic Council at the same time. Come on! Go on, go on! After a burst of laughter among the old members of the guild, they happily started today's party again. Because the month of the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial is approaching, they have been busy with missions in order to be selected by the guild master to participate in the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. Now everyone has a lot of spare money in their hands, so they can enjoy the extremely leisurely time in front of them and wait for the end of this year's fairy tale S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. Gray. However, at the moment when everyone was laughing, Lion and Gray looked at each other. We bet that many people will pass the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial this year. Lion and Gray, who had already verified Kana's foreknowledge ability, took out their entire savings of 30,000 jewels and bet that many people would pass the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial this year. As Gray and Lion finished speaking, the entire guild was extremely quiet. Is it real or fake? A group of mages who were still fond of drinking looked at Gray and Lion in shock. Gray and Lion nodded, they believed in Kana. Although we shouldn't take money from children, if you plan to play, let's play. A group of older mage looked at each other, and they decided to wait until the end of this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. If they won, they would give Gray and Leon their money back. They didn't take money from kids and fooled them after all. Oh. Kana looked at the scene in front of her, did a divination casually, and finally got an unexpected result. The wind on the roof will be noisy this year. Kana looked at the result she calculated and muttered to herself. Small bets are fun, big bets are bad. After Kana put away her magic cards, she kept shaking her head. Her previous prediction was correct. The winner was neither Evan nor Altair. Although Kana has the ability of divination, she rarely participates in gambling in the guild, at least for now. Chapter 81, The Rules for the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. Next morning. Irene, Evan, Urza, Altair and Laxus, the 5 candidates for S-Class's Mage Promotion Trial, came to the pier. You guys are here. Beside the pier, Makarov had been waiting here for a long time. Beside him was a small and medium-sized passenger ship with a fairy tale pattern printed on its sails. Then everyone, let's go. As Makarov said, he jumped onto the passenger ship in front of him first. Take a boat. Laxus looked at the passenger ship in front of him, the corners of his eyes twitched slightly. He seemed to have a deep resentment towards the means of transportation. Of course, you can also choose to fly to Tenro Island by yourself, but I will not be responsible if you fail to take the exam because of wasting magic power. Makarov looked at the reluctant Laxus and said with a sinister smile. Makarov still treats his own grandson equally. Fine. Laxus let out a sigh when he heard the words, and he bravely boarded the passenger ship in front of him. The moment Laxus stepped on the board with both feet, he felt a tumbling in his stomach, as if he was about to vomit it out. As for the others, they are also boarding the boat in front of him at this moment. Including Evan, Altair, Urza, and Irene, all stood on the boat indifferently. It seems that Laxus has already reached that step. Looking at Laxus, who was still churning in his stomach, his face pale but still holding on, Evan thought to himself. Interesting. Similarly, Laxus' abnormality caught Irene's attention. Young man, if I guessed correctly, you should be the Dragon Slayer mage, right? Irene walked up to Laxus and asked. After hearing Irene's words, Laxus was taken aback for a moment, then nodded. Oh. Irene just looked at Laxus casually, as if she had seen through Laxus. So that's the case. The current mage has improved on the first generation of Dragon Slayer, and developed the second generation of Dragon Slayer. He actually thought of making the dragon's heart into a crystal and implanting it into the mage's body to drive the Dragon Slayer magic. In this case, there is really no need to care about the growth of the dragon seed in the body. After Irene looked Laxus up and down, she lamented the advancement of technology 400 years later and the whimsy of modern mages. If this kind of technology existed in her time, it might not be possible that there will be so many Dragon Slayer mage with abnormal bodies, and she doesn't need to be forced to become a dragon. Laxus could feel Irene's gaze constantly looking him up and down, and drops of cold sweat kept breaking out on his forehead. Although Laxus has never been in contact with Irene, he also knows that Irene is the mother of Evan and Urza. Originally, Laxus thought that Irene was just an ordinary person. It wasn't until the fairy tale 24 Hours Endurance Road race that Laxus knew that Irene was a hidden mage, but even so Laxus didn't care too much, he just thought that Irene was faster, or better at time magic. Laxus once faced mage that could use teleportation. Although it was indeed difficult, it was not invincible. Until today. It was only after Laxus faced Irene that he felt how terrifying Irene was. The other party's lavender eyes seemed to be able to see through everything, just a single meeting, seemed to see all the secrets in him. At this moment, Laxus was convinced that the most dangerous person on this ship was not Evan, but the woman in front of him. Just when Laxus was about to say something, the boat under everyone's feet started to move along with the sound of the ship's whistle. Woo! As the passenger ship started to move, Laxus could feel his brain starting to faint again. He closed his eyes, put on his earphones, and leaned against the fence of the ship, blowing the sea breeze, with an extremely cold look on his face. But in fact, Laxus didn't dare to speak, he was afraid that if he opened his mouth, he would spit out all of last night's dinner. Hee, interesting brat. After Irene paid attention to Laxus for a while, she stopped paying attention to him. She was just interested in the way Laxus was holding on. As for Irene herself, because of the ability of the devil fruit, Irene's body has been supplemented, and there is no side effect of Dragon Slayer magic for a long time. In fact, even without the help of her magic, Irene would only be seasick, and she would give herself the attribute of not being dizzy in advance. Just like Wendy, except that Irene's caster magic is more sophisticated. In fact, Irene can also help Laxus get rid of the pain of seasickness. However, Irene thinks that he is already seasick and can't speak at this moment, yet he still holds on, looking calm and breezy. It's very interesting, so I didn't help out. Irene wants to see how long Laxus can last. Everyone is on board now, let me tell you about the rules for this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. Makarov stood on the railing on the deck, watching the crowd preach. The rules are very simple. When we land on Tenro Island, there will be 5 passages. Each person can only enter one passage. After entering the passage, the door will be sealed by the spell laid in advance. Among them, the 5 passages represent 2 attributes, fierce and fight. The so-called fierce battle is to fight with Gildarts, the only S-Class mage in Fairy Tale today. As for fighting, it's a one-on-one battle with everyone who participated in this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. In other words, among the 5 of you, 4 of you will meet each other in the end, and the unlucky one will meet Gildarts. Remember, only the person who defeats the opponent and wins, the channel's spell will disappear, that is to say, only the winner can walk out of the channel, and the loser will directly withdraw from this year's assessment. Those who have passed the first level will directly start the second level assessment. The content of the second level assessment is the maze. In fact, I have already arranged countless spells on Tenro Island, and the first one to reach the Tenro tree is this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial will win. How about that? The rules are very simple, right? Makarov explained the rules of this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. Haha. There is really no innovation at all. But it's okay, it's just what I want. Evan smiled after listening to Makarov's rules. He had already figured out how to deal with Makarov and Gildarts. Makarov actually said that an unlucky guy would meet Gildarts? This sentence is wrong. It should be said that there will be an unlucky person who will meet Irene. To be honest, Evan couldn't wait to see the expressions of Makarov and Gildarts after the first stage of the S-Class Mage promotion trial. That would be amazing. Everyone, I don't know if you understand. Makarov still didn't know what was waiting for him in the future. He looked at everyone excitedly and asked. I have doubts. At this moment, Evan stretched out her hand and asked Makarov. Oh, you ask. Makarov saw a few drops of cold sweat on the forehead of Evan, who raised his hand, and he felt an ominous premonition in his heart, always feeling that Evan was going to do something. What if two people pass through a door at the same time? Evan looked at Makarov and asked. This question. Makarov laughed when he heard that Evan asked this question. The answer is impossible. Because I have set up spells around the cave. The spells are absolute. Only when you defeat the opponent and then throw the opponent out, or if the opponent voluntarily returns the same way, will the door of the passage allow others to pass through. Evan, don't try to play tricks. It took me a month to lay out the spell on the entire 10-row island. You just follow the rules and go obediently. Although Makarov smiled at Evan. Makarov had long thought that Evan would not play cards according to the routine, so he asked the mage in the guild who was good at spells to come to 10-row island to set up the examination place in advance. But there are always surprises, aren't there? Evan looked at Makarov and asked. Haha. Then it will be considered that you all passed the first level. Okay, do you understand the exam rules now? Makarov laughed. He thought that Evan still didn't understand the power of spells, which was normal. He was young and didn't believe that there was anything absolute in this world. We get it. All Fairy Tale S-Class Mage promotion trial examiners except Laxus replied in unison. Chapter 82, Evan, guess who the unlucky guy is? As the boat races forward. Not long after, everyone could already see the 10-row island. A big tree stands here on the island, and the top of the tree seems to support a forest. That is the sacred tree of Fairy Tale, the 10-row tree. That is, when everyone saw the island and marveled at the towering tree, the ship carrying Fairy Tale's future S-Class Mage slowly stopped. Everyone is in front of 10-row island. The assessment starts now. Makarov looked in front of him, there was still a distance to 10-row island, the transparent water waves, turned around and smiled at everyone. Now the assessment begins. Because the boat had just stopped, Laxus hadn't been able to recover and react from the dizziness. Move. Stun. The moment Makarov announced the start of the assessment, Evan cast 2 additional spells on the boat below him in succession. Pa. Immediately, Laxus, Urza, and Altair fainted to the ground, among which Laxus was the most dizzy. Even Makarov felt that his eyes were dim, and he seemed to be unable to stand up. Evan, this brat. Is he already this strong? Makarov resisted the urge to feel nauseous, and looked at Evan and thought to himself. Everyone, you should be stunned here for 5 minutes. After Evan finished speaking, he directly used the anti-gravity force to fly towards 10-row island with Irene and Urza. Damn evangelist! Laxus half closed his eyes, he looked at Evan who was getting further and further away, and roared in his heart. Hey! On the other side, at the moment when Laxus scolded Evan in his heart, Evan had brought Irene and Urza to 10-row island. So brother, you brought us here for a reason, right? Urza stood on the soft sand, looked at Evan and asked. Certainly. In order not to let the 3 of us fight each other, we have to plan our path in advance. Evan looked at Irene and Urza and smiled slightly. Oh. Makes sense. Irene held a small basket in her hand, which contained bread, milk, and some picnic tools. If some of us are eliminated early, we won't be able to have a picnic together. Irene's main purpose is to come to 10-row island for a picnic, and the second is the Fairy Tale S-Class Mage promotion trial. Yes, for Irene, this S-Class Mage promotion trial that Evan and others had prepared for a long time was just a way to participate in the assessment during the picnic. As for whether she could pass the assessment, she didn't care at all, because for Irene, she didn't need any title or certification to prove her strength. Irene came here because she heard that both Urza and Evan would come. For Irene, it was too boring to be alone at home, even with Ilya and the others. Actually, I still want a fair assessment. Urza felt a little regretful. What she wanted was a fair exam. For Urza, even if she unfortunately meets Evan, Irene, or Gildarts during the assessment, Urza will not have any complaints. She will do her best and fight hard. This is a fair and just assessment. Evan smiled and watched Urza preaching. That's right. Irene agreed with Evan's words, and also smiled slightly at Urza. After hearing what her elder brother and mother said, Urza expressed that she had no objections. So, according to my opinion, in order to prevent the three of us from meeting each other, it is safest for Irene, who is the strongest of all, to choose this passage. Evan's knowledge was full at this moment, and Evan's terrifying knowledge scanned the entire island in an instant, and finally chose the way forward for Irene. Here. So that's the case, is it that kid with short brown red hair? Irene looked at the passage that Evan was pointing at. Her lavender eyes flashed a red light, and a bright cross appeared in Irene's eyes. In just an instant, Irene could clearly see what was waiting for her in the passage. Who is it? That's right. The corners of Evan's mouth raised slightly. The path Evan chose for Irene was nothing but the only path of fierce fighting. In other words, the enemy Irene is facing is Gildarts, the only active S-class mage in the Fairy Tale Guild. If other people faced Gildarts, including Evan and Altair, they would have almost no chance of winning against the full-strength Gildarts. Gildarts is really powerful. He is nothing short of a monster. His true strength is stronger than everyone imagined in Fairy Tale. Even if her magic power has been upgraded to the Spriggan 12 level now, Evan still has little chance of winning in the face of the full-strength Gildarts. After all, the current Gildarts is not the one who accidentally met Acknowledge during the mission. He was injured by Acknowledge, cut off his left leg and left hand, and his strength is in a state of declining. In fact, even Gildarts, who was crippled by Acknowledge, could still suppress Blue Note Stinger, the deputy commander of Grimoire Heart, with one move. In other words, the current strength of Gildarts is second only to the time when the Ishgar was at war with the Alvarez Empire. Under the current situation, even in the entire continent of Ishgar, there are not many mages who can defeat Gildarts. But it just so happened that one of the few mages who could defeat Gildarts took part in this assessment. That is Irene Belzarian, who became the opponent of the Wizard King August. At his peak, Gildarts was only able to fight the Wizard King August a few times, and was suppressed almost the whole time. That was also the most embarrassing time for Gildarts other than encountering the Black Dragon. But Irene is different. Irene is a mage of the same level as the Wizard King Gildarts. She is a mage who can wrestle arms with August and have chance to win over August. The corners of Evan's mouth raised slightly and he thought to himself, Gildarts, don't thank me. Just stay in your cave and guess who that unlucky guy is. In the cave. I don't know which unlucky person it will be. Come to my channel. It would be great if it was Evan. This time I will do my best to. Aishu. At this moment, Gildarts, who was standing in the cave quietly waiting for others to challenge him, suddenly sneezed. Strange, why did I suddenly have an ominous premonition? For a moment, Gildarts frowned, and an ominous premonition arose in his heart. Could it be that Irene chose my channel? No way. No way. Only 1 out of 5, can't it be such a coincidence? Gildarts frowned, and drops of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Gildarts felt that he was careless. If Irene chose his passage, then it would be the other way around. The one who became unlucky would be him. At the same time. So Irene, you go through the middle passage. Urza, choose the second passage on the left. I'll take the first passage on the right. Evan has already selected a passage for Urza and Irene. It is good. After listening to Evan's words, Urza and Irene nodded at the same time, and then walked into the passage chosen by Evan. As Urza and Irene entered their respective passages, the green light above their passages immediately turned into a red light, and a red fork was marked on it. This means that these two passages have been blocked. Next. Evan didn't leave, he just stood outside the passage waiting for something. On the other side. At the moment when Evan chose the passage for Irene and Urza, the stun time for Altair and Laxus arrived, and exactly 5 minutes had passed. Damn Evan! Laxus cursed angrily. He was so irritable that he seemed to be planning to rush to the island immediately and fight Evan to the death. I'm sorry Laxus, you'd better wait another 5 minutes. However, the moment Laxus jumped up from the deck and was about to use his lightning magic power to fly to the island, his body, including the sea below him, was immediately frozen by Altair's ice. Before Laxus finished speaking, Altair smiled apologetically at him, and then jumped onto the sea, and the entire sea was frozen by Altair in an instant. In this way, Altair made a road to Tenro Island out of ice. With Altair gone, finally only Laxus was left. Chapter 83, Irene, Gildarts, your luck is really bad. About 6 or 7 minutes had passed since Evan and the others landed on the island. Ah, so boring. I really hope it's a beautiful lady who will come to me for the assessment soon. But Urza is too young, I'm not interested in this kind of stinky brat who only has a runny nose. Irene's words are too fierce. Sure enough, it would be great if Altair came to me to participate in the assessment. By the way, why did I agree to the guild master to come here as an examiner? I really want to go back to the town and drink beer. Gildarts stood alone in the dark cave, talking to himself. His listless eyes showed how bored he was at the moment. Ding! At the moment when Gildarts was extremely troubled, the mechanism in the cave seemed to be triggered. Accompanied by a light sound, the entire cave was lit up with a golden light. Oh! Someone is coming! Someone is coming! Let me see who is here. As an examiner, Gildarts watched with great interest the mage who was about to take part in the assessment. He wanted to end this boring exam immediately, and then go back to the town of Magnolia to have a good drink. Accompanied by the gradually brightening lights, the first thing Gildarts saw was a pair of slender long legs. It's a woman's leg. The moment Gildarts looked at the legs, his expression brightened. Immediately afterwards, as the lights became brighter and brighter, the entire figure of the woman appeared in Gildarts's eyes. That beautiful figure, that tall and plump figure, and that long crimson hair like red silk. Wait, long crimson hair. Cold sweat broke out on Gildarts' forehead instantly. When Gildarts saw the woman's long crimson hair hanging down to her waist, his heart thumped. It jumped up quickly. Of course, it wasn't because Gildarts was too excited to see a woman's beautiful long hair. It's because of fear that the heart beats wildly. Urza! Urza! I bet the person must be Urza. Gildarts prayed silently in his heart. To be honest, this was the first time Gildarts believed in gods. He swore that as long as it wasn't Irene, he would build a temple for the great god whose name he didn't know when he returned home. No. I still have a chance of winning. Gildarts hypnotized himself. It is known that there are two people with long crimson hair, one is Irene, and the other is Urza. Although the figure of the woman in front of him is obviously not Urza, but Gildarts still refuses to give up. He even hoped that it was Evan who was wearing a wig and deliberately scaring him. No way. It wasn't until the beautiful woman showed her full figure that Gildarts' pupils shrank slightly, and he gave up praying. Because praying has no meaning anymore. Sure enough, believing in God is nonsense. Your luck is really bad, Gildarts. Holding the staff in her hand, Irene smiled slightly at Gildarts who was sweating wildly in the cave. Irene's smile is touching, at least Gildarts' heart is moving slightly. Well, he was almost scared out of his wits by Irene's smile. Damn, my luck is really bad. This reminds me of when I participated in the S-Class Mage promotion trial. It was the same at that time. Among the several passages, I immediately picked the most difficult one, and met Guildmaster Makarov directly. Thinking about it carefully, I seem to have been unlucky since then. Gildarts looked at Irene and smiled bitterly. For a moment, they didn't know whether Gildarts was the examiner for Fairy Tale's S-Class Mage promotion trial, or Irene was the examiner for Fairy Tale's S-Class Mage. However, even with my bad luck, I still became the only active S-Class Mage in Fairy Tale. Irene, do you know why? The answer is very simple, because I have the strength of S-Class. Gildarts didn't wait for Irene's answer, so he told Irene the answer. So what? Irene looked at Gildas and asked with a smile. So. There was a flash of light in Gildarts' eyes, and the magic power in his body was stirring. So I surrender. Immediately afterwards, Gildarts smiled smartly, and took out a small white flag from under the cloak. Irene stared blankly at Gildarts who directly announced his surrender. She had no idea that Gildarts would directly choose to surrender. This is an exam, I'm the examiner, there's no need to fight. As long as I think you pass, you'll pass. Gildarts idly watched Irene preach. Yes, this was just an exam, and he, Gildarts, didn't need to fight an unwinnable fight for an exam, so why bother to beat him up? He is not shaking M. Besides, he is already very aware of Irene's strength. Maybe the whole Ishgar, no, maybe there is no mage stronger than Irene in the whole world, right? Gildarts looked at Irene and thought so. Yes. But I really want to beat you. Tell me, how can I do this? Irene smiled slightly at Gildarts, and said the most ruthless words in the most gentle tone. After hearing Irene's words, Gildarts felt a sense of crisis instantly, and the roots of his hair stood on end. That Irene, I mean Senior Irene. No need, really no need, it's just an exam, why bother? Gildarts kept waving his hands towards Irene while laughing nervously. After all, this is an exam. Why? Don't you have a few tricks as the examiner? In this case, it is too unfair to other people who take the test. Irene is still smiling, Irene has always been a fair person. No. Don't you think this is too unfair and cruel to me? Gildarts kept shaking his head, joking. The group of brats took the exam to obtain the S-Class Mage certification, and he took the S-Class Mage promotion trial purely to help the guild, and it's okay to beat others up. I heard it. You said I was too fierce, too violent. Irene looked at Gildarts, who was shaking his head again and again, and smiled. Haha, so you heard it all. Hearing this, Gildarts looked up at the ceiling and smiled softly. He finally understood the reason why Irene was targeting him so much. He broke out in a cold sweat instantly, and at the same time thought to himself, aren't I going to die now? Senior Irene, I was joking. You don't have to take it seriously. Besides, aren't you currently in the assessment of an S-Class Mage promotion trial? Hurry out now. As the number 1, you will definitely be able to successfully obtain the S-Class Mage certification. Follow me. Go on, it's too much to lose. Gildarts trembled slightly, he kept explaining, trying to make a last-ditch attempt to persuade Irene. If this scene of Gildarts is seen by others in Fairy Tale members, their jaws will drop in shock. You must know that Gildarts is a representative of maturity and stability, and is also recognized as the strongest mage in Fairy Tale. The other mages of Fairy Tale never imagined that Gildarts, whom they always thought to be invincible, would show a look of panic. But the current Gildarts looks like he was in a great fear. It's useless to talk too much. Besides, who said it would take long? Gildarts, are you overestimating yourself? I remember that it's only been a few months since you were beaten up by me last time, right? Last time I didn't hit you with a single move. Or, in just a few months, you already think that you have grown to the point where you can last in my hands for a long time. Don't get too carried away. Brat. As Irene said, a sneer appeared on her face, and then she waved the staff in her hand. Gildarts looked numb at Irene, who was waving the staff. Boom. Accompanied by a roar, it seemed that the entire Tenro Island was shaking. It seems that there is already a fight over there. Evan smiled slightly as she felt the vibration of the island, and then looked at Altair, who had just landed. Chapter 84, Let's pass the level happily together. Evan, what are you still doing here? Why don't you enter the tunnel? Are you planning to do it now? Altair frowned at Evan, and then directly assumed a fighting posture. Of course not. Evan smiled slightly at Altair, who was on guard against him. I'm waiting for you here just because I have something I want to talk to you about. How do you see that channel? As Evan said, she pointed to one of the 5 passages. Altair frowned, she was thinking about whether to listen to Evan's opinion. It's actually like this. Evan looked at Altair, who was frowning tightly, and floated up slightly, and came to Altair's side, whispering into Altair's ear. So that's how it is. Altair's eyes lit up after hearing Evan's words, and then she gave Evan a meaningful look, and said, Evan, you are so bold. Aren't you afraid that the guild master will be blown up by you? Haha. Evan said nothing, just smiled slightly. Okay. Then I choose to join. Altair looked at the chuckling Evan and already knew everything. She followed Evan's instructions and walked into the first passage on the right. Yes, the first passage on the right was originally intended to be used by Evan, but now Evan has given it up to Altair. In other words, now Urza, Irene and Evan have completed 3 paths. In addition to Irene, who has already met Gildarts, Evan and Laxus will definitely meet one of Urza and Altair in their choice. Then next, Evan chose the leftmost passage. In an instant, among the 5 channels, the first one on the left, the second one on the left, the one in the middle, and the one on the far right were all selected, leaving only the second one on the right still open. Damn! Just after Evan and Altair all entered the channel, Laxus, who was wet from head to toe, swam out of the sea. Yes, because Laxus was frozen in the sea by Altair. When the ice was about to melt, Laxus fell into the sea and got covered in water. I'm already behind now, and I can't continue to fall behind. Laxus glanced at the 4 closed passages, and then walked into the last passage. Slap! 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 In the passageway where Urza was, she sat on a huge rock with her eyes closed and meditated. It wasn't until she heard footsteps in her ears that Urza slowly opened her eyes. Coming! Urza pulled out the steel sword beside her, according to what Brother Evan said. In order to prevent Urza, Evan and Irene met each other. The 3 chose different paths. In other words, the next person Urza meets will be one of Laxus or Altair. Laxus's words are okay to say, he is just defeated. But for Altair, to be honest, Urza is not sure that she can defeat the opponent. After all, Altair is a mage with the same title as Guildmaster Makarov, and his strength is by no means easy. With a flash of light, Urza finally saw who was coming. Then Urza was stunned, because the person who came was neither Laxus nor Altair, but... It's been a long time. Urza. It was Evan. She saw Evan standing in front of Urza and smiling slightly at Urza. Brother Evan. Why are you here? Urza looked at Evan and asked suspiciously. How should I put it? Originally, I really wanted someone else to come, but I was afraid that if someone else came, you would destroy my plan, so I came. Evan saw Urza beckoning and said with a smile. Based on Evan's understanding of Urza, if the person who came was not him or Irene, Urza would definitely talk to the other party after fighting. So after thinking about it, Evan decided that he should come to the passageway where Urza was in person. In this way, many troublesome things could be avoided. Brother Evan's plan. Urza frowned. In fact, after Evan boarded the boat, she could feel that Evan was plotting something with Irene. That's right. Evan nodded. Actually, all of us have fallen into a misunderstanding. First of all, what is our purpose? Our purpose is to pass through the magical door behind us. It's not a fight. As Evan said, she walked to the passage sealed by the spell. He gently stretched out his hand towards the wall sealed by the spell in front of him. Immediately, the wall lit up, and countless spells rose up, blocking Evan's way. Urza was thoughtful after listening to Evan's words. However, that door has been spelled. The Guildmaster said that only one person is defeated, and the door behind us will be opened after returning the same way. And the Guildmaster said that the spell is absolute, that is to say if we want to pass, we can only do so by defeating each other. Urza thought for a while, watching Evan preach. The spell is the most special kind of magic in the magic world, and it belongs to a kind of word magic. Spell is very cumbersome and takes a lot of time to work effectively. If it's an encounter, it's very bad for people who use magic spells. Because in general encounters, there is no time to write down the spells for those who use spell, but once the spell mage writes down the spells, the person who wins the spells must absolutely obey the conditions attached to the spells. That's why there is a saying in the mainland that spells are absolute. But it's not. Spells can be cleared by humans. Because 99% of the spells in this world are written using magic barrier particles, that is to say, as long as the magic barrier particles that make up the spell are eliminated, the spell will be solved automatically. So the Spriggan 12 did a research for a method to break all magic formulas in the world by eliminating the particles of magic barriers. Now that there is a method, what troubles Evan now is where to find the magic obstacle particle eliminator. If it was someone else, there would be nothing they could do, but this didn't bother Evan, because Evan happened to have the magic that could eliminate the ability of magic particles. The person who uses word magic and magic barrier particles the most in this world is none other than Zeref. Book of Zeref is magic books written by Zeref using magic particles. In the book written that the demons are given life with words, and the bodies of those demons created by Zeref are also composed of countless magic particles by Zeref. Of course, this is also the reason why the R system can use magic barrier particles to resurrect demons infinitely. And Evan's Demon Slayer magic is specially designed to eliminate demons, and it happens to have the attribute of eliminating demonic obstacles particles. Evan can use the caster magic to directly add the attributes of the particles that eliminate evil and eliminate magic barriers to these spells, opening a hole in the absolute spells. That's why Evan asked Makarov before, what would happen if two people passed through the cave at the same time. Evan was very satisfied with Makarov's answer. Urza, what if I tell you that I can destroy the spell? Evan looked at Urza and asked. Urza was taken aback for a moment, but she never thought that Evan could directly destroy the spell. But since Evan said so, then Evan can definitely do it. Urza has always believed in Evan. So this time, I plan to destroy all the spells and let everyone pass. Evan looked at Urza and spoke with a smile. Is this really possible? Urza looked at Evan and asked. Who cares? Try it and you'll know. As Evan said, the magic power in her body boiled instantly, and in the next second, he cast caster magic on the entire 10-row island. Magical barrier particles. With Evan's magic usage, the whole island lit up with a white light. Urza was taken aback when she felt the surging magic power coming from the island. At the same time, this feeling, shouldn't it be? Makarov sat at the entrance of the second maze, with a straw in his mouth, drinking watermelon juice. Different from all the mages participating in the assessment, Makarov, as the guild master, looks like he is on a leisurely vacation. Until he felt the vibration from the ground, and the cold sweat flowed wildly on his forehead. Hey, are you kidding me? Evan has this level of magical power. Feeling the vibration in the air, Makarov's pupils trembled violently. Boom! In the next second, with a burst of white light, all the spells on the entire island disappeared completely. Makarov watched the labyrinth he had spent a month of painstakingly arranging slowly disappear before his eyes, wanting to cry without tears. Yes, not only the first level, but even the second level, the maze that Makarov spent a month arranging disappeared. Boom! At this point, Makarov knelt on the ground helplessly. He stared blankly at the fact that all the levels he had spent a month setting up all failed, and the smile on his face disappeared in an instant. Evan! In an instant, the entire 10-row island echoed, and Makarov held his heart and screamed into the sky. At the same time, in the cave where Evan and Urza are. Looks like I succeeded. Evan slowly opened his eyes. He knew that his magic had been activated successfully. In the instant just now, all the spells on the entire island had failed. Evan smiled at this. Yes, the smile doesn't disappear, it just shifts. In fact, when he was outside the cave, he could also eliminate these spells directly, but Evan didn't do it. Because once Evan eliminates all the spells on the island, then everyone can completely bypass the cave of Gildarts. But in this case, wouldn't Irene have no reason to beat Gildarts? In order to let Irene go to fight Gildarts, he took great pains, and even delayed the time to activate the magic. Evan believed that Gildarts could understand his. After all, Evan is doing it for the good of Gildarts, so as to save Gildarts, who can't find an opponent on Ishgar, from getting lost in the magic way. Evan wants to tell Gildarts that there is a world beyond the sky, there are more powerful people outside. After all, the journey of a mage to explore the magic path cannot always be smooth sailing, it must be full of ups and downs. Thinking of this, Evan looked at Urza and smiled slightly. You see, all the spells that blocked our progress have disappeared. So, let's pass the level happily together. Urza looked at Evan, who had indeed cleared all the spells in the cave, and didn't know what to say. Although her brother was strong, he was very reckless. In fact, Evan originally wanted to pass the level alone, but who let Gildarts put him together? Well, he has changed his mind now, and plans to bring four together, and everyone will come happily together, and go back happily together. As for Urza and Laxus, they became S-class mage prematurely. With the current strength of Urza and Laxus, will it be dangerous to perform S-class quests? You can rest assured about this, because there is no S-class quests for them at all. Evan could even do S-class quests by himself. On the other side, Altair and Laxus also met in their own cave. Are you kidding me? Who wants to be promoted like a handout? I will beat you all to the ground with my own strength. After hearing Altair's words, Laxus shouted angrily, and his body turned into lightning and rushed towards Altair. Hey! Can't you be a little more obedient? You bastard! After Altair heard what Laxus said, a flash of anger flashed in her eyes, and the magic riot in her body instantly frozen Laxus in place. Is this the only way you will listen to me obediently? Altair looked at Laxus, who was frozen by her, and spoke helplessly. Crack, click, click. However, Just when Altair thought he had dealt with Laxus, with a roar, Laxus broke through Altair's ice. This kid! Altair looked at Laxus, who had broken through her ice, his pupils trembled. Who? Altair, do you think I will be defeated by the same trick a second time? Laxus panted heavily, and he looked at Altair with a smug smile. Boom! Before Laxus could launch an attack, Laxus was frozen in place again with a burst of terrifying cold. What big talk! Brat! It's just a fluke that broke my ice, I can completely freeze you again. Altair looked at Laxus, who was still smiling triumphantly even though he was frozen in front of him, and spoke softly. Then now comes the question, how should I take this brat out of here? Altair looked up and down at the ice sculpture in front of him, lost in thought. Chapter 85, Irene vs. Gildarts. Meanwhile, on the other side. The only fierce battle among all the channels, which is the only active S-class mage in Fairy Tail, the channel where Gildarts is. This feeling, is it Evan? After Irene felt Evan's magic, she stopped her movements. I saw Irene standing in front of Gildarts holding a staff, whispering softly. Who? On the other side, Gildarts, who was standing opposite Irene, gasped heavily. Unlike Irene, who was still graceful and comfortable, not even a speck of dust on her body, Gildarts looked extremely embarrassed at this moment. Not only was his beloved cloak half burned by Irene, but even he took care of it carefully and laid it well. Hairspray, and short orange-red hair from back to back, now looks messy. Damn it! It's not an opponent at all. Gildarts stood where he was, taking advantage of Irene's lack of attack, quietly recovering his strength while talking to himself. In just a short moment, Gildarts took over 100 kinds of magic with different attributes. With the additional magic of that frequency, Gildarts attack Irene. Meanwhile, after continuously using crush magic, Gildarts felt a sense of collapse. This high-frequency use of super high-level destruction magic shattering, even with Gildarts' strength, is a bit too much. It's almost here. It's a pleasure playing with you, but Evan is already calling me. Irene came back to her senses, looked at Gildarts, who was about to fall down from exhaustion, smiled gracefully, and decided to let him go for the time being, because Irene had enough. Yes, the current battle that Gildarts is fighting with all his strength is like playing a game in Irene's eyes. Hey! You don't think you can run away after the fight is over? Me? But now I'm starting to get serious. However, what Irene didn't expect was that under the influence of Irene's decision to let Gildarts go, Gildarts became arrogant instead. Gildarts looking at Irene and shouting. At this moment, in Gildarts' eyes, there was a raging flame of war. Gildarts is now on fire. Damn! Aren't you a masochist? Although trampling on others does make people feel happy, but I don't have time for you today. Irene looked at Gildarts, who was full of fighting spirit, covered her mouth, and smiled lightly. Whipping! Are you kidding? Be careful that you will be crushed by me. The outcome is just beginning now. Gildarts grinned after hearing what Irene said. After hearing what Gildarts said, Irene frowned. You have been beaten by me unilaterally from the very beginning, yet you dare to say such big words that the real victory has only just begun. Irene said, her eyes froze, and a dangerous breath came from her body. Emitting, Irene's purple eyes looked at Gildarts coldly, and said softly, Boy! Since when did you have the illusion that you can defeat me? It starts now. Gildarts yelled and rushed directly towards Irene. Gildarts pointed his right hand at Irene, and shouted at the same time, Crush! The moment Gildarts' voice fell, endless white light directly enveloped Irene. Boom! In an instant, the terrifying magic power engulfed Irene and all the land around Irene. Useless! Irene bathed in the magic of Gildarts, like a spring breeze. The staff in her hand waved lightly, and the property of being unable to split directly counteracted Gildarts' shattering magic. It's not over yet. Since you can't use crush magic on you, then crush! Gildarts pointed to the ground beneath him. Boom! In an instant, the ground under the feet of Gildarts and Irene was all shattered into pieces and torn apart, making it impossible for people to stand firm. Do you think you can beat me like this? Boy! Stupid! Irene looked at Gildarts, who smashed the ground, and smiled disdainfully. In this case, your shattering magic is useless, right? Irene tapped her toes lightly, and she jumped up from the shattered ground in such a light way, floating in mid-air. Hey! Gildarts looked at Irene, who floated up from the ground, the corner of his mouth slightly raised. Irene looked at the chuckling Gildarts, narrowing her eyes, and Irene knew what Gildarts, the brat, was probably planning. He he he. Irene, if you don't avoid it, your clothes will get dirty. Gildarts pointed behind Irene and snickered. After hearing what Gildarts said, Irene turned her head slightly to look, and saw the clod on the ceiling above Irene's head, which was crushed into dross by Gildarts at some point. For a moment, it seemed that the top floor of the entire cave was about to fall. As Gildarts said, if she continued to stay in mid-air, she would definitely be covered in ashes. Stability. The corner of Irene's mouth raised slightly, and she waved the staff in her hand. In an instant, the entire crumbling cave became extremely stable and solid. Oh, it seems that you are going to be in trouble. Gildarts, now, your shattering magic may not even be able to change the surrounding environment. In other words, your shattering magic is completely useless. After Irene secured the cave, she looked at Gildarts and smiled. My crush magic is completely useless? Are you kidding me? I've been waiting for this moment. Crush. After hearing Irene's words, Gildarts calmly used crush on the ground below him. It's useless, there is a huge difference in magic power between you and me, your crush magic can't shatter my magic. Irene shook her head as she looked at Gildarts, who was using crush magic on the ground. In her eyes, Gildarts was doing nothing. What? After hearing Irene's words, Gildarts raised his mouth. When Gildarts' crush magic touched the solid ground, it was bounced back instantly, and hit Gildarts directly in reverse. In an instant, Gildarts, who had endured his crush magic, had countless lines all over his body, and those lines divided his body into small grids one by one. You bastard! Irene looked at Gildarts, who crushed her, and a look of shock flashed in her eyes. This was the first time that Irene was surprised after fighting against Gildarts for such a long time. Since my crush, whether it is good for you or the surrounding environment, is all invalid, then I can only fight you head-on. Irene, you won't give me a powerful attack, will you? Gildarts looked at Irene and smiled, and instantly accompanied by a burst of white light, his body was torn apart, turning into a version of little Gildarts. In a hurry, these little Gildarts then smashed the air waves generated by the magic and flew around Irene. Surround Irene! Look at the trick! Crush! Countless little Gildarts jumped up at the same time, and attacked Irene. Irene looked at little Gildarts who surrounded her, and her scalp felt numb, and she suddenly felt dense phobia. Hey! Something appeared in front of us, blocking our way. I don't know, I can't see it at all. Is it a barrier? When was it attached? However, when Gildarts was about to get close to Irene, they hit an invisible and transparent barrier one after another. Psitsize. What? In the next second, the projection screen released lightning strikes towards everyone who touched it, and suddenly, there were bursts of screams in the cave. No, everyone, don't touch this barrier will automatically counterattack. After discovering that the barrier around Irene would automatically counterattack, Gildarts yelled loudly at the little Gildarts beside them. Okay, that's enough. This farce can end, you are more disgusting now than when you grew up, change back for me. Crush. Irene felt a little nauseous looking at little Gildarts, and used magic on little Gildarts casually. In an instant, countless little Gildarts gathered together and turned into a whole, huge Gildarts, standing in front of Irene. Hey! This distance! Irene looked at Gildarts in front of her and raised her eyebrows. Irene, you are careless. Gildarts looked at Irene, who was close at hand, and while the corner of his mouth was slightly raised, he concentrated all his magic power on his left hand. Look at my strongest magic. Irene. I am the only S-class mage active in Fairy Tale. Crushing evil, spreading the truth, Empyrean. Gildarts yelled, and cast his strongest magic at Irene, who finally managed to close the distance. Irene watched Gildarts' full blow, and subconsciously blocked the staff in front of her body. However, the moment the staff hit Gildarts' fist, it immediately shattered. In the next second, a terrifying magic power enveloped Irene. At the same time, the entire Tenro Island trembled in front of Gildarts' punch. The air, the earth, and the ocean all became extremely viscous in front of this powerful magic power. Boom! Accompanied by a roar, Gildarts carried out his magic punch, directly broke through Irene's strong magic, pierced through the ceiling of the entire examination room, turned into a white light, broke through Tenro Island, and flew towards the sky. In the end, it fell on the barrier that Evan had added around the island in advance to isolate the magic power. Is this, Gildarts? At this moment, Evan, who had brought Urza outside the cave, saw the punch that broke through the ceiling and shot straight into the sky, as if it was going to blow up the entire island. Her pupils shrank slightly. Irene's place, shouldn't something happen? Evan frowned. He didn't expect Gildarts and Irene to fight to such an extent, so Evan was a little worried about Irene. Don't beat Gildarts to death. Otherwise, I won't be able to explain to Kana. There was cold sweat streaming down Evan's forehead. Yes, Evan was afraid that Irene would confiscate her strength and beat Gildarts to death. This time, Evan was worried about Irene. As for whether Irene will lose, this kind of thing is impossible. Because, for Gildarts, Irene has an overwhelming fighting power. At the same time, when the members of Fairy Tail fight against each other, it's not easy to hang on to each other. At the same time, in the examination room where Gildarts and Irene battled. Who? Is there such a big gap in strength between us? Gildarts's chest rose and fell, and while panting heavily, he smiled bitterly. I have to say, Gildarts, you played well. You can break my staff. In theory, I should actually reward you with a little red flower. At the same time, Irene, who was standing opposite Gildarts, stretched out a hand and firmly held Gildarts' fist. In the face of Gildarts' killing punch, Irene was still unscathed. Who? I thought close combat would be your weakness. In the end, where is your weakness in close combat? If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, if you were the one blocking my punch, I would have thought it was a giant dragon blocking my punch. Gildarts was a little helpless. He originally thought that Irene was holding a staff and fighting him at long distances because Irene was not good at melee combat. However, when Gildarts approached Irene, his punch was easily caught by Irene. Gildarts realized that close combat is not Irene's weakness at all. On the contrary, close combat is Irene's strong point. The staff in Irene's hand is not used to protect herself, but to protect those who fight her. According to Irene, she didn't want those little toys that were beyond her control to be destroyed by her too quickly. You just said, you thought something blocked your fist. I really didn't hear clearly. After hearing what Gildarts said, Irene smiled and asked Gildarts. Gildarts looked at the smiling Irene and didn't take it seriously. He thought Irene really didn't hear clearly. So Gildarts thought for a while, looked at Irene and replied, I said. If I didn't know that the person fighting me was you, I would have thought I was fighting a giant dragon. Before Gildarts finished speaking, he was hit in the abdomen by a huge force. Puff! Gildarts spit out countless white foams from his mouth, rolled his eyes and blocked them on the ground. Boy, who did you say was the dragon? Irene asked coldly, looking at Gildarts, who was fainting in front of her. Irene was angry, for the first time in the 11 years since she met Evan. The reason is that someone actually called her a dragon. She has always been human. It just looks a bit like a dragon. Chapter 86, Everyone Advances. When Irene pulled the rag like Gildarts out of the cave, what she saw were Evan and Urza, who were waiting for her outside the door. That thing is. After Evan saw Irene, she pointed at the dilapidated Gildarts in Irene's hand, which seemed to be in a mess. The corners of his eyes twitched slightly, he couldn't help but asked. Ah! What are you talking about? This is Gildarts, who knows nothing but hooking up with women. When Evan grows up, don't learn from him, otherwise mother will be sad and feel like I didn't educate Evan well. After hearing Evan's question, Irene gently pulled up Gildarts in her hand, and then threw it on the ground like throwing garbage, then smiled at Evan and replied. Evan looked at the smiling Irene, feeling an inexplicable chill in her heart. Hey! Sometimes I really don't like to deal with this kind of garbage, after all, there are too many bacteria on it. After Irene finished disposing of the garbage, she waved the remade staff lightly, and immediately water came from the sky. After Irene carefully cleaned her leather-gloved hands, she looked at Evan and asked, Can we proceed to the second level? No, wait a second, there are still 2 people who haven't come. As Evan said, she looked towards the last cave, which was the cave where Altair and Laxus were located. Evan looked at the cave with some confusion. According to what he had discussed with Altair before, Altair and Laxus should have come out at this moment. But now this situation. Obviously, if nothing else, there was an accident. About 10 minutes passed, accompanied by a rustling sound of wheels rubbing against the ground. A huge thing walked out of the cave. Hey, what is this? Evan frowned as he looked at the things in front of her. When the huge thing appeared in front of Evan and the others, Evan fell silent. Evan saw that the huge thing in front of him was a car made of ice, and there was an ice sculpture on the car. The ice sculpture was none other than Laxus, and the person pulling the cart was naturally Altair. I'm sorry. I was a little delayed because I had to make an ice cart. This kid insists on defeating me with strength. Altair put the car aside, pointed at the frozen Laxus from the inside out, and spoke helplessly. I see. Evan looked at the lifelike, ice sculpture covered with a thick layer of ice, and nodded slightly. He could guess the general plot. It should be Altair who told Laxus about Evan's plan. As a result, Laxus yelled at Altair angrily, who will go according to your arrangement? I will defeat you all by strength, and then I will become this year's S-class mage. It just so happens that Altair is also a violent person. After hearing what Laxus said, she must have yelled at Laxus angrily, why can't you understand the words, you little brat? If that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless. Then, Laxus turned into an ice sculpture. Do you want to thaw him? Irene looked at the frozen Laxus, and asked Evan. Forget it. I think a Laxus who can't speak or move is a good Laxus. Evan thought for a moment and shook her head. I agree. Urza gave her brother a thumbs up. Indeed. Altair also nodded at this time. In short, keep it as it is now, and drag him to the 10-row tree like this. As for the second level, anyway, the previous traps are gone, just walk through it in a dignified manner. Evan preached to the crowd around her. It is good. Immediately afterwards, Evan was supported by Urza, Irene and Altair. The four people pulled the cart and walked up to Makarov together, and then stroked the trunk of the 10-row tree at the same time under Makarov's livid face. Guildmaster, the assessment is over. Is it time to issue the S-class title? Hey! What a coincidence! The four of us touched the tree trunk at the same time. It seems that there will be 4 S-class mage this year. Evan looked at Makarov with a livid face, and deliberately smiled. It doesn't count. It doesn't count. Makarov crossed his hands in front of him, indicating that the exams of Evan and others did not count. Hey? You didn't say that before. Old man. After hearing Makarov's words, Evan asked uncomfortably. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I am the guild master of Fairy Tale, I have the final say. After hearing what Evan said, Makarov looked like he was going to lie down to the end. This old man. Evan looked at Makarov with a slight smile on the corner of her mouth, playing tricks? He likes to deal with rascals. How about we just listen to you if you roll around in front of me? Evan thought for a moment, then smiled at Makarov. Urza looked at Evan who was sneering, and shivered. She felt that her elder brother looked more and more like her mother Irene. In fact, Urza didn't realize it herself. She also has a tendency to shake, after all, she was raised by Irene. Evangelist. You forced me to. After hearing what Evan said, Makarov looked serious. After all, he is the 10 wizard saints and the guild master of Fairy Tale. Then Makarov rolled in front of Evan, on the ground in front of him. Ah this! For a moment, Makarov's actions left Evan speechless. Then Guildmaster, you have to give someone among us an S-class mage certification, right? After all, this year's S-class mage promotion trial can't be passed by everyone, right? Besides, this is obviously a problem with loopholes in your own rules. Evan watched Makarov, who was already shameless and wanted to stick to Fairy Tale's S-class mage promotion trial tradition, preaching helplessly. Ahem, I was wrong before. The rule of the second level is not to go through the maze to the 10-row tree. In fact, the rule of the second level of our S-class mage promotion trial is to fight. That is to say, the winner of the first level fighting each other, the final winner is this year's S-class mage. Makarov also fought to the end for the tradition of Fairy Tale. He didn't even want his old face. He coughed slightly at first, and then looked at the crowd with a reddish face while preaching. Guildmaster, this is what you said. If we are in a competition, if one of us is not careful and uses a little force, what do you think will happen, Guild Master? I heard that the tomb of Master Mavis, the founder of our fairy tale guild, is also on Tenro Island. Guild Master, you don't want us to be careless and use too much force. Do you want the entire Tenro Island and the tomb of the first Guild Master Mavis sank into the sea? After listening to Makarov's words, Evan asked with a smile. Threat? This is a naked threat. Makarov's face was sweating violently after hearing what Evan said. He could already tell that Evan was threatening him. But the most frightening thing is that, as Evan said, if Evan and the others let go of their hands and feet to fight on Tenro Island, this holy land of the guild will really sink into the sea. At that time, Makarov would really be ashamed to see the second guild master perched who had returned from his wanderings. Ah, that. Actually, I misremembered just now. In fact, the assessment of the second level is not a battle, but... Makarov scratched his cheek, cold sweat was streaming down his forehead, thinking about what to do with the monsters in front of him for the second level. But what? Shouldn't. Guild Master, you didn't think about it at all, did you? Evan looked at the hesitant Makarov, and asked with the corners of her mouth slightly raised. Of course I've thought about it. After hearing what Evan said, Makarov's expression changed. Although, as Evan said, regarding the assessment of the second level of fairy tale, he really didn't think about what to compare at all. Mainly, who knew that Evan could really completely destroy the second level of the maze he had designed. That is a labyrinth written with a spell that claims to have an absolute attribute. But although Makarov wasn't ready at all, the content of the second level of the S-Class Mage promotion trial. But this is absolutely unacceptable, it is related to the prestige of the Guild Master. Although his fame as Makarov is gone today. Even his face was completely wiped out by the rolling around just now. Then tell me quickly. Everyone's time is precious. Gildarts. If you don't go to the hospital, you will die. Evan glanced at Gildarts, who had been thrown on the ice cart to keep fresh, and urged Makarov. Don't talk about Gildarts. No one knows Gildarts better than me. With his vitality, let alone being beaten like this, even if half of his internal organs are destroyed for a while, he won't be at all. Will die. As Gildart's good brother for many years, Makarov knew very well about Gildart's vitality. Don't change the subject. Seeing that Makarov wanted to take the opportunity to change the subject, made a timely move and dragged Makarov back who was about to change the subject. Ahem, I didn't change the subject. Makarov saw that the trick of changing the subject didn't work, countless beads of sweat overflowed from his forehead, and then, he suddenly thought of something, and his eyes lit up. Suddenly laughed, that's right. Hee. You mentioned the tomb of the first guild master, right? Speaking of which, it's time to sweep the grave of the first guild master. Then the assessment of the second level is to find the tomb of the first guild master Mavis. Makarov looked at Evan with his head held high. He knew that Evan must have never been to Tenro Island. Perhaps Evan had done her homework and knew that Mavis' tomb was on Tenro Island, but Evan would definitely not find it easily. Guild Master, did you just think of this? Evan looked at Makarov and asked. Not at all. Hearing this, Makarov turned his head contortedly, not daring to look into Evan's eyes. How about it, Guild Master? How about we make a bet? If we can find Mavis' tomb within 10 minutes, how about you advance all of us? Take it as a small punishment for wasting everyone's time by mistakenly saying the second level of this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. This can also be regarded as stabilizing your prestige as the Guild Master. Evan looked at the guilty Makarov in front of him and suddenly thought of something. He smiled and asked Makarov softly. This. After hearing what Evan said, Makarov looked a little hesitant. Guild Master, what do you think? None of us have seen the tomb of the first Guild Master Mavis. Tenro Island is so big, you can never find it in 10 minutes. Besides, according to your previous rules, we should have been promoted as a group. Now because of you, our assessments have all been delayed. You have to express it. Anyway, in 10 minutes, everyone couldn't find the tomb, so we just gave each other a step down, and everyone was evened out. Evan looked at the hesitant Makarov, smiled slightly, and approached the little old man to discuss. This is good. After listening to Evan's words, Makarov thought for a while, and then directly agreed with Evan's words. Because in Makarov's view, what Evan said makes sense. You must know that the environment on Tenro Island is intricate, even if you fly from the sky to observe the island, it will take more than several hours to find Mavis' tomb. Now Evan actually said that it is absolutely impossible to find Mavis' tomb within 10 minutes. So if Evan said that all the members would be promoted after finding the tomb in 10 minutes, it could be regarded as giving Makarov a step down. After all, according to the rules originally set by Makarov, the 4 people in front of him would have to advance, and it was Makarov who made them fail to advance. Although Makarov could feel that the few people in front of him didn't take the S-class mage promotion trial too seriously, there was always a trace of resentment in their hearts. Now, because of Evan's words, the resentment was directly resolved. Even if the 4 of them failed to find Mavis's tomb within 10 minutes, and all of them failed to advance, it was a sign of the lack of strength of the 4 of them, and it had nothing to do with Makarov. After all, Makarov gave them a chance. Makarov thought so, and gave Evan an apologetic look. He shouldn't have listened to that Gildarts. Evan is a good boy. Makarov looked at Evan's eyes shining with tears, he was moved, and said softly in his heart, Evan. You really are a good boy who cares about the guild master. No matter what, next year, I will make you an S-class mage. However, before Makarov could finish being moved, Evan spoke. Okay, that's what you said, everyone heard it. As long as we find Mavis' tomb within 10 minutes, all members will be promoted. After hearing Makarov's words, Evan also showed a satisfied smile. He smiled and looked at Irene beside him. Makarov's heart trembled when he heard that. Irene. Please. Evan sent a trusting look to Irene. Simple. Irene smiled slightly at Evan, and then opened her eyes wide. Chapter 87, Grave Sweepers. After Irene found Mavis' tomb in an instant, Makarov finally resigned to his fate, broke the tradition of previous years, and decided to distribute S-class mage qualification certificates to everyone. In fact, there has never been such a powerful existence in the S-class mage promotion trial of previous years participating in the S-class mage promotion trial of Fairy Tale. So, everyone pulled Laxus and lay him on the ice cart. Gildarts, who prevented the stinking corpse, walked towards Mavis' tomb. After all, since you have come to Tenro Island, it is always not good not to pay homage to Mavis's tomb. Although Mavis's body is not here, Tenro Island is indeed the first guild master of Fairy Tale soul laid. Evan, speaking of which, how did you break the spell? On the way, Makarov asked Evan about his doubts. Because when I was dealing with Deliara, I found that Deliara has a strong magic resistance attribute. In order to eliminate Deliara, I added the same demon attribute as Deliara, thus obtaining the Demon Slayer law. In the Demon Slayer magic, there is the power to eliminate the particles of magic barriers. It just so happens that 99% of the magicians in the world are using the particles of magic barriers to write spells. I directly used the Cater magic to attach the property of removing the magic barrier particles to the entire island, and directly removed the words used to write the spell. Evan explained the principle of how she cleared the spell that Makarov had imposed on Tenro Island. Can it still be like this? Makarov opened his mouth wide. This was the first time he had heard of such manipulations. These manipulations by Evan directly broke Makarov's common sense. For the first time, he understood that the so-called absoluteness of the technique was not absolute. Absolutely this kind of thing in the true sense. I see, Evan, did you use this method to clear the spell? I thought you just used separation and attachment magic to separate all the words that make up the formula. Although the combination of spells and such things can exert extremely powerful power, if you take them apart, to put it bluntly, they are just simple words, and words are not so powerful. After listening to Evan's words, Irene thought about the sermon for a while. If it turns into Irene, the moment Irene jumps to the spell will collapse directly. Is there another way? Evan was taken aback after hearing what Irene said. It is obvious that Irene's method is simpler than his. In this case, there is no need to eliminate the attribute of magic barrier particles at all. Besides, I have more than 100 simple and quick ways to clarify the spells. Evan, would you like to listen to them? Irene looked at Evan's serious expression, and seemed to think of something, and asked Evan. Appreciate further details. When Evan heard this, he immediately moved to Irene's side, like a student listening carefully in class. He looked at Irene intently, for fear of missing any words that Irene said. Actually, there is a safer way besides separating the text. Although the current mainstream characters and magic spells in Ishgar are written in ancient symbols, in fact, there are many kinds of characters in this world, and those characters can form spells. Some of them, even if it is a single word, still possessing impressive power, such as a single word like cut. When Irene said this, she wrote a character cut in the air, and then threw it on the nearby trees. In an instant, several trees on the island were broken into pieces under Irene's chopping. It was as if it was cut off by some sharp weapon. I see. Evan looked at Irene's text and nodded. As for word magic, Evan knew a little bit about it, and there were characters in this world. Speaking of which, in the original story, in the Heart of the Devil established by Precht, there were users of non-mainstream characters and word magic, which caused a lot of trouble for Precht and others at that time. So these single words can also produce ability words. If we directly separate the words, it will be very dangerous. For this reason, we can directly separate and reorganize the land with the magic formula attached. Of course, this is to deal with the magic of the same level. The method of the spell cast by the mentor, or a magister stronger than you. If the person who casts the spell is very weak, then we can be more straightforward, directly adding the attribute of erasing text, directly erasing the ability of text, and turning the spell into the most basic magic particle. Irene looked at Evan and began to talk about various ways to deal with the spells. I see. Evan listened carefully to Irene's words, nodding her head from time to time. Makarov looked at Evan and Irene, who were discussing how to crack the magic formula that claimed to have absolute attributes while advancing, and he fell silent. Just give the title of S-Class to this monster family. If we don't give it to them now, won't they come to Tenro Island to take the S-Class Mage promotion trial next year, the year after that? Give me a break, old man. Giving the Belzarian family an exam is a double torture both mentally and physically. If they still come next year, I don't want to hold S-Class Mage promotion trial in recent years. How should I say it? I'm a little sad. Makarov thought silently in his heart. Of course, although Makarov was heartbroken by Evan and the others, Makarov would happily hold the S-Class Mage promotion trial whenever he saw a seedling who could take the S-Class Mage promotion trial. After all, watching the members of the guild grow stronger and stronger is the happiest thing for the guild master, Makarov. After a while. Ahead is the tomb of Mavis, the first guild master of Fairy Tale. Don't make trouble, everyone, be serious. Makarov did not know when he had already walked in front of Evan and the others. Obviously, Evan and the others should lead the team to prove that Irene had indeed found the tomb of the first guild master. According to Laxus, the old man has reached the age of dementia symptoms, and it is time to retire. Oh! Evan and the others cooperated with Makarov and responded softly. As the crowd slowly moved forward, they finally saw the tomb of the first guild master Mavis. It was a stone tablet with bursts of light emitting from the center, as if burning with a mysterious flame of life. Everyone! Makarov led the crowd to the stone tablet, and was about to say something, but the words got stuck in his throat. There was a boy with short black hair and wearing a strange ethnic minority costume, who came to Mavis' tomb one step ahead of everyone else. Makarov knew that the boy who was standing in front of the grave of Mavis, the first guild master of Fairy Tale, definitely did not belong to Fairy Tale, because the whole guild was up and down, and Makarov remembered every day the appearance of a member of Fairy Tale. There is no such boy in front of me. That is, can't it? Just as Makarov was watching the boy frown, Evan also noticed the boy, and when he saw the boy's back, he was stunned. Because whether it was the young man's clothes or the ominous aura emanating from the young man, Evan could think of a person. A person who has practiced Fairy Tale for more than 400 years. At the same time, Evan was speechless, about the incident of meeting the villainous big boss before leaving Mfurishi village. But Evan thought about it, it seemed that just after crossing, he met Irene, the boss of the penultimate level, and almost fell into a box. Compared with the desperate situation back then, this is much better now. At least it's better than meeting August. At the same time, the moment Irene saw the boy, her eyes narrowed slightly. When she was looking for Mavis's tomb, she released her probing eyes, but her probing eyes didn't notice the boy. Although Irene only roughly observed the forest, the purpose was to find relatively large objects, but even so, the fact that the boy was able to escape Irene's probing eyes was enough to show that he was extraordinary. After all, it's not just a cat or a dog, they all have the power to escape Irene's probing eyes. Even Irene in human form is far weaker than Irene in dragon form, and after eating Evan's glint devil fruit, Irene gets more powerful state. This man is dangerous. Makarov's expression was extremely serious, he could feel the extremely terrifying magic power in the young man's body, that extremely unknown magic power. Chapter 88, Godslayer Magic. Makarov knew that the young man in front of him was definitely not a kind person, but an extremely dangerous person. For this reason, he subconsciously stood in front of Evan, Irene, and the others, constantly guarding against the young man in front of him. The young man seemed to have noticed Makarov and the others behind him, and he saw that he was holding a bouquet of wild flowers randomly picked from the roadside, and gently placed it in front of Mavis's grave, then turned around and walked towards Mavis. Makarov and others looked. The black-haired boy, with extremely sad eyes, smiled apologetically at Makarov and the others, and then said, "I didn't expect to meet you here. I just felt that someone was here a few days ago. You are nagging me, feeling a little sad in your heart, so you plan to pay homage to Mavis. Sorry. I have caused you trouble." After the boy finished speaking, he turned and walked towards the forest not far away. "Do not move." Makarov didn't say this to the boy who went there, but to Evan and the others behind him. Makarov was afraid that Evan and the others would stop the dangerous boy in front of him. Although the Holy Land is very important in Makarov's heart, the fact that others found the Holy Land of fairy tale is also a big deal in Makarov's heart. But in Makarov's eyes, the safety of fairy tale members is more important than fairy tale Holy Land being invaded. After Makarov's words fell, Evan and the others all stopped their movements, silently watching the young man's leaving back. Just as everyone was injecting silently, the back view of this black-haired boy. The black-haired boy suddenly stopped his pace. "No. That thing is coming." The boy's pupils trembled suddenly, and he immediately turned to look at Makarov and the others and said, "Run. Quick. Otherwise, it will be too late." The moment the boy's voice fell, a dark aura was released from around the boy. Just such a short moment, there were a big change from the birds in the sky and the flowers in front of Mavis's grave. Even the magic power on the island is filled with dead silence at this moment. That endless life instantly declines. Oops! Looking at the pitch-black aura, Makarov immediately magnified, protecting his members behind him. Of course, this does not mean that Makarov considers himself the strongest among all the people present. He already knew that he was old, whether it was Gildarts or later Evan had surpassed him, let alone the unfathomable Irene. It's just the responsibility of being the guild master of fairy tale, which makes him have to use his own flesh and blood to protect the safety of his family members. The moment Makarov was about to be touched by the dark breath, Irene moved. Append, grow. Irene's fingertips moving slightly, and countless vines grew on the ground in an instant, blocking the dark breath. This, what is it? Seeing the dark aura continuously devouring the vitality of the vines, Altair's heart was shaken. She had never seen such brutal magic, so she couldn't help asking. "I'm afraid this is the curse of constraction in the legend." After all, Irene is a person who has lived for 400 years. She has seen a lot, and instantly recognized the black breath released by the black-haired boy. The curse of constraction. The curse in the legend? You will encounter it here. It's amazing, I thought it was just made up by the ancients. Hearing this, Makarov and Altair looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock. Apparently they had also heard of this frightening curse, but seeing it is worth seeing. After seeing this curse today, they realized how terrible this first curse from a great recorded in the history books was. Black Wizard Ziref. Evan looked at the black-haired boy and muttered to himself. He never thought that he would meet Ziref, who came to pay homage to Mavis for the first time in his S-Class Mage promotion trial. Although, if you insist, Ziref is paying homage to his lover. Are you all right? Just when everyone was shocked by the fact that the legendary curse actually existed, the black-haired boy, that is, Ziref, flew in front of them. Looking at the boy in front of them, Makarov and Altair all put on guard postures. Haha. Sorry to surprise you. Relax. That curse won't come. Ziref looked at Makarov and Altair, who were looking at him on guard, and smiled bitterly. He didn't intend to hurt anyone at first, but when he saw Makarov, he thought of Yuri, and when he thought of Yuri, he thought of Mavis, and when he thought of Mavis, love arose in his heart. As soon as there is love, the great god of life is not happy. And now Ziref has sealed the love in his heart, so he can communicate with everyone safely. You are. Makarov returned to the size of a normal person, and at the same time put down everyone in his arms. He looked at Ziref and asked. I'm just a man who should have died. A man of no importance. Don't worry, Makarov, I'll be leaving soon. Ziref looked at Makarov and shook his head with a smile. you. Makarov was taken aback for a moment. He didn't expect that Ziref could call his name directly, which shocked him very much. Gildarts, Laxus. Immediately afterwards, a scene that shocked Makarov even more happened. Ziref looked at Gildarts and Laxus, who were unconscious on the ice cart, and whispered their names. Then Ziref looked at Altair again, and Evan and Urza said, "And, Evan, Altair and Urza, everyone in Fairy Tale. You must work hard, try hard to become strong, and stop." While talking, Ziref was stunned when his eyes fell on Irene. Because even Ziref, who has been secretly paying attention to Fairy Tale, doesn't know Irene at all. After a long while, Ziref smiled bitterly, looked at Irene and said, "I never thought that there would be such a powerful mage on Ishgar. What a mistake, haha. However, if this is the case, August's plan will probably fail. That's fine, the time has not yet come, the time has not yet arrived. Natsu, I'm waiting for you." As Ziref spoke, he seemed to think of something, his expression became sad again, and there seemed to be a black aura around him again. For a moment, Irene and the others looked shocked. Evan frowned when she saw the black aura emanating from his body. He tried to cast calm magic on Ziref, but failed. Maybe at the level of Ziref, only a mage like Irene who has stepped into the limit field can add to Ziref. Hey! Cursed person! Calm down, the curse is coming again. Evan saw that Ziref's magic was invalidated, and he wanted to fall into memory again, and then caused the curse of constraction. Snapped. In desperation, Evan couldn't care less. He came directly to Ziref, slapped Ziref on the cheek, and chose to use physics to help Ziref wake up. Following Evan's slap, Makarov was stunned, Altair was stunned, Urza was stunned, and even Ziref was stunned. However, following Evan's slap, Ziref's eyes gradually flashed a little bit of clarity, and at the same time, the curse began to slowly dissipate. Evan breathed a sigh of relief looking at Ziref, who had been interrupted by him. "Sorry for making you worry. I should have just left." Ziref, who came to his senses, did not get angry at Evan and the others because of that slap, but apologized to everyone. Ziref, who hasn't fallen ill. But it is also because of Ziref's excessive gentleness, seeing flowers and plants, and birds eating seeds on the side of the road, he will also develop a character of pity, so he will be rejected by life all the way. Everything he loves dies slowly with Ziref's love. In fact, the reason why Evan slapped Ziref was to make him hate him, because in this world, Ziref's dislike is far safer than his love. "Is your curse really irreversible?" Evan asked after interrupting Ziref's memory. "For 400 years, I have tried countless methods and traveled to several worlds, but I still can't find a way to lift the curse. Maybe God is invincible." After hearing what Evan said, Ziref sighed. It's not that he didn't work hard, but he really couldn't help it. In 400 years, he traveled all over Ishgar, the West Continent, and even the North Continent. Even traveled to other worlds, but still can't find a way to fight the curse of calming the nerves. Is there no way to defeat God? Evan thought for a moment, then continued to ask. Oh, the way to defeat God. After hearing what Evan said, Ziref fell into deep thought. In theory, there is indeed a way to defeat God. As long as you cultivate the God Slayer magic to the extreme. But it's impossible, because no one has so far been able to. No, since Dragon Slayer can be cultivated to the extreme, then God Slayer should also be able to. Ziref began to fall into a state of talking to himself. I feel the power of the Dragon Slayer magic. Could it be that? Suddenly, Ziref thought of something, his eyes lit up with a dark light, and he looked towards Evan, as if he saw everything about Evan in an instant, and then said to himself, "So, there is a strange power in your body, that power doesn't seem to belong to the world, it's amazing, it can host the power of Dragon Slayer. If you say that, you should also be able to practice God Slayer magic. Evan, do you want to practice God Slayer magic?" After a while, Ziref seemed to think of something, he looked at Evan and asked. Chapter 89, Death Seeker. All the mages of Fairy Tale were shocked by the sudden situation. First of all, they are just going to visit the grave of the first guild master Mavis. In the end, they met a black-haired boy who exuded a dangerous aura inexplicably. The boy's magical power was so strong that it was different from ordinary people, and it even made people feel scared. Immediately afterwards, the boy released the curse, which can plunder other people's vitality, which is extremely dangerous. The moment Makarov saw the curse, he held the awareness of his own death and planned to protect everyone, but was blocked by Irene's magic. It was blocked by the rapidly growing vines with huge vitality, and the curse dissipated by itself after devouring the equivalent vitality. Then, as if he knew them all, the boy not only read out the name of the first guild master, but also all the fairy tale members present, Makarov, Gildarts, Laxus, Evan, the names of everyone including Ulter and even Urza. In the end, when the boy saw Irene, his expression flashed with shock, and he said a lot of words that were completely incomprehensible. Then, there were signs of a curse erupting from the boy's body, but Evan forcibly interrupted him. Immediately afterwards, the black-haired boy and Evan began to chat as if they were chatting at home. At the end of the chat, the black-haired boy suddenly wanted to teach Evan magic, which made everyone present look confused. The development of things has exceeded everyone's expectations. Evan, I can feel the power of demons in your body, that is the power of the demon slayer, right? If a normal person has cultivated the method of demon slayer to your current level, he should have already turned into a semi-demon. No, maybe he has already turned into a demon. Is it because you have the vitality of other worlds in your body? If that's the case, how many of the same vitality you have a total in your body? 1, 2, 3. In this case, you can also practice God Slayer magic and Dragon Slayer magic. If you can practice 3 kinds of attribute at the same time, maybe you can kill me. Ziref looked up and down at Evan, and finally showed a surprised smile. He looked at Evan as if he had discovered some treasure. It's as if Irene can perceive the power of the devil fruit. A mage of Ziref's level can also feel the power of a devil fruit. Ziref could even go one step further, knowing that the devil fruit in Evan's body is a power that does not belong to this world. After all, he has not only stayed in one world during the past 400 years. But this is nothing. The power of another world is normal in Ziref's eyes, because in the past 400 years, he has traveled to several worlds to deal with the curse in his body. The world Evan and the others are in now is called Earthland, a world full of magic and balanced. Except for Earthland people, who has balanced magic power. There is also a world that lacks magic power so much that it is about to lose magic power. Its name is Edelas. In order to save magic power, people in that world have developed countless magic props. Super Island. Except for Earthland, a world with balanced magic power, and Edelas, a world with a lack of magic. There is still a lot of magic power overflowing, so that the world of Elantir, which is about to be destroyed. In order not to be destroyed by the overflowing magic power, there was a group of occupations that specialize in eliminating magic power in that world. The sky is full of stars, every star is a world. Countless worlds make up the universe they are in. This is the conclusion that Ziref spent 400 years coming to. And the devil fruit in Evan's body, in the eyes of Ziref, may be the result of one of the worlds in the sky. After all, although Ziref has visited countless worlds in order to seek the power to break the curse, he still hasn't traveled all over the sky. This universe is too big, and it cannot be turned around forever with the power of a poor man. After Ziref found out with regret that the curse of Kant action also took effect in other worlds. Therefore, he gave up the parade of the stars and returned to Earthland, quietly waiting for the introduction that he buried 400 years ago, that is, his younger brother, and also his highest masterpiece to arrive. According to Ziref's calculations, there are still about 2.5 years before his younger brother came to this world. Please Evan, you are the mage of fairy tale, right? Then how about accepting my commission? Cultivate the 3-element magic, and then kill me. As Ziref spoke, he grabbed Evan's hand excitedly. This. Before Evan could speak, a system voice sounded in his mind. Sudden mission, eliminate Ziref. Receive the mission reward, 100 years quest medal. Reward for completing the mission, 100 years quest medal. This, Ziref is really generous. Listening to the system voice echoing in her mind, Evan felt emotional. It was the first time he received a task that didn't need to be completed, but he could directly get the reward as long as he accepted the task, and the reward was a 100 years quest medal. Sure enough, it was because Ziref lived long enough, and he was different from Irene who stayed alone in the forest. Ziref is very active on the mainland, running through almost the entire timeline of fairy tale, so the events that are a little bit close to Ziref are all 10 years level, and the moments involving Ziref's own secrets are even more so. Jump directly to the difficulty of 100 years quest level. Okay, then I'll. Evan didn't think about it, so he planned to agree to Ziref's request directly. Evan, wait. Do you know what will happen if you practice magic that destroys attributes? Just when Evan was about to agree to Ziref's request, Irene came to Evan and separated Evan from Ziref with the staff in her hand. At the same time, she looked at Evan with serious eyes. Evan looked at Irene's eyes and became silent. He knew in his heart that Irene was deeply affected by the magic of destroying attributes, but in order to become stronger, Evan had no choice. Moreover, Evan, who has side effects of devil fruits, does not need to worry, even if the devil fruit mutates in the future. That mutated devil fruit, what does it matter to me, Evan? Evan is just a person who ate a devil fruit. Relax. Irene. I'm ready. Evan looked at Irene and spoke seriously. Ugh. Irene and Evan looked at each other, and after a while, they sighed helplessly. I see. You have your own opinions since you were a child. I don't know what you are worried about, but don't put too much pressure on yourself, because your mother will always be behind you and support you. Irene looked at Evan's firm eyes, finally retracted her staff, and patted Evan's small head lightly. Evan nodded. He was moved, but because he was moved, and because he cared about Irene, Urza, Makarov and the others must continue to work hard to become stronger. Then let's begin. Seeing that Irene agreed to Evan's agreement with him, Ziref saw a dark ball of light suddenly appeared in his hand. This is Godslayer magic, put it away, Evan. As Ziref spoke, he directly attached the magic power in his hand to Evan's body. Yes, Ziref can also add magic. After living for 400 years, Ziref knows almost all magic in this world. In the whole world, there are more people who know more magic than Ziref, perhaps only the Wizard King August. It's just that Ziref's caster magic doesn't seem to be that proficient, not as powerful and proficient as Irene. But it is also enough to teach Evan the Godslayer magic. After Evan obtained the attribute of Godslayer magic from Ziref, he didn't talk nonsense, and directly separated and attached this power to the Logia devil fruit and glint glint fruit in his body. In an instant, the glint glint fruit in Evan's body underwent drastic changes. From Logia type glint glint fruit, LV8+, to Godslayer magic, nature type glint glint fruit, LV8+, with an additional prefix of Godslayer magic. At the same time, Evan also felt that the upper limit of the glint glint fruit in his body was directly opened. Evan didn't hesitate. After he changed the attribute power of the devil fruit in his body, he shot a blow directly at the tree beside him. Boom! Immediately, a pitch-black light with the attribute of Godslayer magic was released, piercing through the tree. It seems to be a success. Ziref smiled gratifiedly as he looked at Evan, who had successfully added the attribute of Godslayer magic. It seems that Ziref is happier watching Evan become stronger than Evan feels himself becoming stronger. Chapter 90, 3 Slayer Attribute. Then, Ziref seemed to think of something, looked at Evan helplessly and said, I'm sorry, Evan. Because even I don't know how to use Dragon Slayer magic, so I can't teach you about the application of Dragon Slayer magic. You can only find a real dragon by yourself, get the attribute of Dragon Slayer from the dragon, or buy a Dragon Slayer magic crystal. But speaking of dragons, there is one in the North Continent. Immediately afterwards, Ziref seemed to think of something again, watching Evan preaching. In fact, it's not that Ziref doesn't know Dragon Slayer magic, but that he voluntarily abandoned Dragon Slayer magic. He can learn it, but he doesn't want to learn it. In his eyes, Dragon Slayer magic and the curse on him, it is also a very terrifying curse. After hearing what Ziref said, Evan was silent for a while, and then looked at Irene beside her. Ugh! I really can't do anything about you. Irene sighed, and used caster magic on Evan. Although she really doesn't want to teach others Dragon Slayer magic. Originally, Irene wanted to destroy this door with her own hands, the harmful magic she created. Could it be? No way. Ziref stared at Irene, who had used magic on Evan, and his eyes widened. Evan, he didn't realize that Irene in front of him was actually a Dragon Slayer mage. A Dragon Slayer mage with this strength should already. Ziref fell into deep thought. According to his understanding of Dragon Slayer magic, if Irene is a Dragon Slayer mage, the Dragon Slayer magic in her body should have already matured. The side effects of the mastery of Slayer magic are similar. The body of the user of the Demon Slayer magic will gradually become demonized, and the side effect of the mastery of Dragon Slayer magic is to turn into a dragon. However, in Ziref's eyes, Irene's magic power and breath are human beings. Yes, Ziref can see through Evan, but he can't see through Irene, who has obtained the devil fruit and has been practicing in secret for more than 10 years. Because in terms of strength, Ziref is similar to Irene. In fact, although Ziref is better in magic power, he is not good at fighting. He is a scientific researcher. Whatever magic Ziref uses, the power is devastating. Therefore, Ziref can only feel that Irene is very powerful, so powerful that even August may not be able to defeat him, but he cannot see through the magic used by Irene. Oh! After Irene used additional magic on Evan, in just a short moment, Evan could feel a pure power pouring into his body. In the next second, his Zoan-type devil fruit, fish fruit, phantom beast, blue dragon form, LV8+, also has the prefix of Dragon Slayer. So much so that Evan's entire devil fruit template was corrected to Devil Fruit, Dragon Slayer, Zoan, fish fruit, phantom beast, blue dragon form, LV8+, Demon Slayer, Paramecia, press fruits, LV8+, God Slayer, Logia, glint flint fruit, LV8+. From now on, Evan is the only one known in the whole continent who possesses the trinity of gods, demons, and dragons, and a 3-element slayer mage. Come on, Evan. You must work hard to become stronger, and then kill me. Ziref looked at Evan, who had 3 elements of slayer magic, and he seemed very moved. Moved by 400 years of traveling, he finally saw the hope of my own death. Seeing that Evan is getting stronger, Ziref is really relieved. Anyway, I'm going to take on this task. Evan smiled at Ziref. Ziref, who hasn't started getting sick yet, is surprisingly good. If you can. Looking at Evan, Ziref suddenly thought of something. I still have 2 tasks here. Maybe I'm a little too greedy. Evan, if even you can't kill me, then please help me defeat Aknologia. If you can kill me and break the curse of contraction, then please, find Angsarum, and give him a hard punch, just like you just hit me. Ziref looked at Evan with soft eyes, and at the same time gave 2 brand new quests based on whether Evan could crusade him. Sudden mission, follow up to eliminate Ziref, 1. Mission details, when Ziref thinks you can't destroy him, it will be triggered automatically. The task is changed to, destroy the Dragon King Aknologia. Receive the mission reward, a 10 years mission medal. Reward for completing the mission, 100 years quest medal. Sudden mission, follow up to eliminate Ziref, 2. Task details, when Ziref dies or the curse is lifted, it will be triggered automatically. The task is added, let's hit Angsarum hard. Let the great who controls life and destruction feel the wrath of the goblin. Receive the mission reward, 10 years mission medal. Reward for completing the mission, a Millennium Mission Medal. Note, after wearing the Millennium Mission Medal, all attribute suffixes will be +1. Note, even the attributes obtained after obtaining the Millennium Mission Medal will still automatically obtain the +1 attribute suffix. This is... Evan stared straight at the luxurious reward in front of him. For a moment, Ziref became a moving treasure in Evan's eyes. What kind of evil villain is this? This is simply the legendary grandpa of Amfurashi village with countless secrets that can be released casually, top-level missions. To be honest, there was a tiny bit of Evan thinking of quitting Fairy Tail and joining the Alvarez Empire, and directly took Irene and Urza to start the Guardian mode. No, how can this be called quitting Fairy Tail? He just defected to the father of the first guild master Mavis. It's all family. Ahem, of course Evan was just thinking about it. Okay. I've accepted all these tasks, do you have any more tasks? Just say if you have any tasks. Evan took Ziref's hand and asked with a lot of meaning. That's gone for now. Ziref has traveled around this continent for so many years since Mavis' death, and this is the first time he has seen someone so enthusiastic about him, which makes him a little uncomfortable. Is it really gone? Evan asked enthusiastically. Really, no more. Ziref lowered his head and thought for a while. He really couldn't think of anything else for Evan to do. Really? What a pity. Evan sighed helplessly, it seemed that there was only so much wool to be gathered for the time being. Ziref looked at Evan with a regretful face, and scratched his cheek. He didn't expect Evan to like doing tasks so much, and it was such a challenging and almost impossible task. To be honest, when he released these tasks, he thought Evan would give up. After all, these tasks are all very difficult. For hundreds of years, even thousands of years, no one has been able to complete them. It is almost impossible for people to complete them. Brother Evangelist. The young Urza frowned as she looked at Evan, who was holding on to Ziref's wrist. There was something wrong with the way she looked at Evan and Ziref. It was the first time for her to see Evan being so enthusiastic about people. For some reason, she somehow felt that Ziref was not very pleasing to the eye. At the same time, Urza was afraid that Evan was on the wrong path, and that would be bad. Then I'm leaving. If I continue to stay here, I am afraid that if I am too happy, that thing will come to trouble me again. Goodbye to everyone in Fairy Tale, and goodbye to Evan. You must work hard to become stronger than anyone else, and then kill me before I go crazy. Use all your strength to stop me. Please. As Ziref spoke, he got away from Evan's grasp, and in a blink of an eye, his figure was far away from Evan and the others. Almost in the blink of an eye, Ziref has arrived outside Tenro Island. He walked on the sea with both feet like this, and kept moving forward. It seemed that neither the sea nor the sky, no matter whether there was lava or cracks under his feet, could not stop Ziref's progress. Have you seen Mavis? The children in your guild are very powerful. Ziref, who was standing outside Tenro Island, seemed to feel something. He showed a warm smile. He seemed to be talking to himself, and he seemed to be talking to someone, so he set foot on the own new journey. Chapter 91, Then let them come, won't they? That guild master. After obtaining Ziref and Irene's ability to destroy elements, Evan turned to look at Makarov, intending to explain something. Evan, it's great that you're fine. Without waiting for Evan to say anything more, Makarov, this little old man, hugged Evan and cried loudly. Do you know how worried I was when I saw you run in front of that monster? That's the curse of God Angsarum. The legendary curse. God's curse. It's so scary, it really scared me to death. Makarov had no intention of investigating Evan's secret. He was only worried that Evan would be taken away by Ziref's curse wave by wave. From Evan's slap to interrupt Ziref's curse, Evan had obtained a magic that specifically eliminated gods from Ziref's hands. Makarov had been watching from the beginning to the end with fear, and at the same time, he was on guard. At that time, Makarov had decided that if Ziref had injured Evan, no matter who Ziref was, he would have to give up this old life for Ziref to leave something behind. This was his responsibility as the guild master of the fairy tale. It's fine, guild master. I've made you worry. Evan comforted the little old man in front of him, a little embarrassed. The test, S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. Just as Evan was comforting Makarov, a roar echoed out as Laxus finally broke out of the ice. As soon as he came out, his entire body released bursts of lightning. After patrolling for a week and seeing Altair, he roared at Altair, Altair. Let's fight. I haven't lost yet. Test? Test my ass. What test? If you want to take the test, I will accompany you to the end. After Makarov heard Laxus's words, his arm suddenly grew bigger and he smashed Laxus to the ground with a punch. Pfft! Laxus, who had taken a punch from the giant hand, spat out a mouthful of white liquid and fainted. No more tests. All qualified, qualified. Makarov sat down on the ground. Today's exam was full of twists and turns. He was so scared that he no longer had any mood. Right now, he only wanted to finish his lunch and return to the guild as soon as possible. In short, the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial is over and the picnic time has begun. Ever since he landed on Tenro Island, Makarov had been tense. He wanted to relax a little. He was too tired. Since that's the case, let's have a happy banquet. Speaking of which, it would be better if there were more people at the bank. There are really too few people now. It seems that the bed used for sleeping has disappeared because Laxus broke out of the ice. In addition, when he heard the words "start the banquet," his jeans moved. Gildarts, who had just woken up from his coma and revived, came to Makarov's side and said, "That's right. It would be great if everyone could come." Makarov nodded his head in agreement. "Since you want the children in the guild to come, why don't you just let them come?" Irene stood beside Makarov and Gildarts. After listening to the conversation between Makarov and Gildarts, she raised her eyebrows and looked at Makarov and Gildarts in confusion. "Ah! Even if we inform them to come to Tenro Island now, it will take half a day, right? It's too late." Gildarts was stunned. His small head could not understand the meaning of Irene's words. After all, the Fairy Tale Guild was still quite far away from Tenro Island. Yes, yes. Makarov nodded. Even if we take a straight line, the distance between the island and the town is at least several hundred kilometers. Even if we ride a ship with accelerated magic, it will still take us half a day to. Makarov continued to speak to Irene after listening to her. It's only a few hundred kilometers. It will take half a day to reach such a close distance. Irene smiled after listening to Makarov and Gildarts. Then, she waved the staff in her hand and lightly touched the ground of Tenro Island. In an instant, Irene's magic power directly turned into a line from Tenro Island, extending towards the kingdom of Fiori, Magnolia Town, and the Fairy Tale Guild. For a time, the entire earth, sea, and all the places covered by Irene's magic power were shining. No way! Makarov looked at the glowing earth before him, as well as the boundless sea that radiated light. His eyes widened. Is this really a magic that humans can control? Makarov was puzzled in his heart. Was this really a magic that humans could control? At the same time, in the kingdom of Fiori, in Magnolia Town, in the Fairy Tale Guild, a group of mages are gathered together, eating, drinking, and having fun. By the way, how's the examination for the guild master and the others? A member sat in his seat and asked curiously as he looked at the others. I don't know. Could it be that it has already ended? Hearing this, Macau scratched his shiny hair and asked the others. Yes. It's probably over. Kana looked at the card in her hand and casually said, I wonder who won. Wakaba a little curious. He was itching to know the results of the S-Class Mage promotion trial. After all, this is related to his fate and financial situation for the next year. According to my prophecy, we will know the results soon. After hearing Wakaba's words, Kana made a divination, then looked at the prediction given by the card in her hand and said, Oh! How long will it take? At this time, Macau walked to Kana and asked. 5. Wakaba looked at the card's prediction, stretched out her 5 fingers, and softly said 5. So that's how it is. 5 hours later. 5 hours later, the guild master and the others will be back? It seems that this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial is going unusually smoothly. Wakaba was a little emotional. The S-Class Mage promotion trial in previous years would last for 1 or 2 days. Kana shook her head after hearing Wakaba's words, indicating that Wakaba was not going to be 5 hours later. What? Could it be 5 days later? Wakaba was a little shocked. Now that he thought about it, could there be a problem with this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial? After hearing Wakaba's words, Kana still shook her head. Idiot, it should be 5 minutes later. At this time, Macau hit Wei Baba on the shoulder. Ma Baba was speechless at his old friend. After all, Kana had just said that the results would be out soon. 5 days had nothing to do with soon. 4. 3. 2. 1. Just as Macau and Wakaba were competing against each other, the two of them heard Kana quickly count the remaining 4 numbers. Macau and Wakaba only reacted after hearing Kana's words. The two of them instantly widened their eyes. Boom! In the next second, with a roar, the entire Fairy Tale Guild lit up, and a series of tremors caused all the mages in the guild to be unable to stand steadily. What happened? What exactly is going on? Enemy attack? Could it be an enemy attack? Could it be that the bastards from the Dark Guild have taken advantage of the fact that the guild master and the others are not here to ambush us? Just as the mages in the guild were shocked, the entire Fairy Tale Guild disappeared in a flash of light in Magnolia Town. At the same time, on Tenro Island. Boom! With a roar, the ground in front of the tomb of the first guild master of the fairy tale, Mavis, was accompanied by a roar. With a flash of light, a 3-story old house appeared in the open space. Ah! Makarov looked at the huge building in front of him that had the words Mavis printed on it, and his mouth opened wide. He felt his entire body go numb. Phew! I haven't exercised for a long time. I'm a little tired. Irene looked at the guild master in front of her and wiped the sweat off her forehead. Just now, she had consumed about 1,000th of her magic power. She was really tired. Just now, the magic power was replenished again. Chapter 92, The Huge Gap in Strength. Guild Master, this building in front of us is our guild, right? I'm not dreaming, am I? As he looked at the 3-story building in front of him, he felt his scalp tingle. Probably, maybe. Makarov's lips moved slightly after he heard what Laxus said. His mouth was dry, and he didn't know what kind of feelings he should have at this moment, what words he should say. Is this really a magic that humans can master? And that extraordinary, overwhelming magic power just now? That is me, Gildars, Evan, and Altair. No, no, no. Even if all the magic power of the entire guild is added together, it can't compare to overwhelming magic power. Is that really something humans can have? Makarov was puzzled. He leaned over and looked at Irene. At this moment, he finally understood why the black-haired youth who had just given him a cold and fearful feeling was surprised when he saw Irene. Because Irene and the black-haired youth were the same kind of existence, they were both inhuman monsters. How long will it take for me to reach this level? 10 years? 100 years? 1000 years? Laxus, who had been arguing about defeating Altair and becoming an S-class mage, also quieted down. For the first time, the irascible Laxus fell into deep thought. There is always someone stronger than you. There is always someone stronger. Sure enough, coming from the north to the west is the right choice. Altair looked at the fairy tale guild in front of him and smiled bitterly. In any case, she has the title of the first female mage in the north and is an ice magister who can be called strong. In the end, when she came to the west, she discovered that there were countless mages stronger than her in this world. In the past, she was a little ignorant. However, fortunately, she came out of the well with Grey and Lion and saw an even wider sky. Compared to the surprise, there were only 4 people, Laxus, Altair, Markolov, and even Gildars. Urza and Evan were a lot. Evan already knew how powerful Irene was, and Urza was. In her eyes, Irene had always been unfathomable and invincible, so whatever she did was normal in her eyes. In short, if that's the case, won't our companions come? Irene smiled at the shocked crowd. It was only a few hundred kilometers, was it very far? Without waiting for Makarov and the others to recover from their shock, Irene continued to look at Makarov and the others. She smiled and said, "Then let's enter the guild and take a look." Oh. Oh. Okay, okay. Makarov and Gildars obediently nodded after hearing Irene's words. For a time, they actually didn't know who was the guild master of the fairy tale guild. At the same time, in the guild. Last time, it was because we weren't here that we allowed Urza to steal the limelight. That's right, that's right. This time, the 2 of us will be able to defeat the enemy that came. Grey and Lion shouted in the guild at this moment. They were even more excited than the enemy who attacked their guild when they heard that there was an enemy coming to attack their guild. This was because they finally found a chance to show off. And most importantly, there was finally a reasonable and not punished fight. They were not good at anything else, but they liked fighting the most. Kill them all. At this moment, Makarov consciously took over his position as the acting guild master and began to mobilize all the mages in the guild. Oh. This time, we can't let the little ghost steal the limelight. For a time, the fairy tale mages who were quietly waiting for the guild assessment to end roared in unison. Their morale was high, and they were ready to find a dark guild to have a good fight. They wanted to vent their anger and resentment for not being selected by the guild master and going to Tenro Island, the holy land of the guild, to participate in the S-class mage promotion trial. And then, just as the members of the guild were in high spirit, the door of the guild was slowly pushed open, and a tall figure slowly walked into the guild with light on his back. Now, Grey and Lion looked at each other and then used their strongest magic at the same time. Ice Make, Lance. Ice Make, Snow Dragon. In an instant, a 3-meter-long lance made entirely of ice, as well as a 5-meter-long dragon made of ice, attacked the person who had just entered the guild. However, the moment Grey and Lion activated their magic, they finally saw who it was. They saw that the person who entered the guild had short orange hair, an old face covered in stubble, and a sorry-looking uncle wearing a tattered cloak that only had a few strips of cloth left on his face. The uncle looked miserable, looking very much like a beggar on the side of the road. It's the kind of person who doesn't need to dress up. As long as they sit on the side of the road, there will be people who can't help but be kind and take the initiative to give charity to them. The miserable appearance. Fuck. Fuck. Grey and Lion looked at the extremely miserable person in front of them and said this person's name in surprise. Yes, this extremely miserable person, who was even more like a beggar than a beggar on the side of the road, was the same person who was beaten up by Irene. So annoying. Looking at the lance and snow dragon that were attacking him, a trace of exhaustion flashed across his face, and then he casually blocked them. In an instant, with a burst of white light, whether it was Grey's lance or Lion's snow dragon, they all turned into countless pieces of ice. I'm sorry. Grey and Lion, I don't have the mood to play with you today. Gildars looked at Lion and Grey with a pair of dead fish eyes. Gildars, isn't it an enemy attack? What the hell is going on? Upon hearing the enemy attack, the group of fairy tale members who were eager to fight were all stunned when they saw that the person who entered the room was not an enemy but instead a Gildars. You see, it seems that Gildars has fought with someone before? Could it be that Gildars has already killed all the enemies? A member of Fairy Tale noticed the embarrassment of Gildars, so he explained. Idiot! As the examiner for this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial, he followed the Guild Master and the others to Tenro Island to participate in the assessment. However, as soon as the member of the Demon Tail finished speaking, he was immediately refuted by the others. So, what exactly is going on? This time, the member of the guild who had found out that Kittle Daz was in an extremely sorry state also did not understand. Sigh. Looking at the members of the guild, he sighed. He did not explain anything and walked to the bar counter. Welcome back, Gildars. The Fairy Tale logistics staff in front of the bar immediately smiled and greeted him when they saw him. A glass of beer. Gildars sat in front of the bar counter and asked for a glass of beer from the logistics staff. Okay. The staff at the bar counter immediately served a large glass of beer to Gildars. A ton. Looking at the beer in front of him, he didn't waste any words and immediately gulped it down. Whew. After he drank a whole glass of beer in one go, he let out a shaky breath and revealed a satisfied smile. Resurrected. As expected, when you are tired, you should drink a big glass of iced beer. What the hell is going on? Just as he was gulping down his beer, the members of the Fairy Tale looked at his back in surprise. They were silent and did not act rashly. Just as everyone was puzzled. We're back. Guildmaster Makarov, along with Evan, Laxus, Altair, and Irene, after seeing how Gildars dealt with the attacks of Grey and Lion. Only then did the members who had participated in this year's Fairy Tale S-Class Mage Promotion Trial walk in from outside. Guildmaster. The people of the guild looked at Makarov in shock. Altair. Grey and Lion were also a bit confused. Wasn't it Dark Guild who came to fight? Why did the Guildmaster and Altair come? Chapter 93, yes. They were puzzled. What's going on, Guildmaster? Yes. Yes. Did you guys cause the shock just now? Didn't you go to Tenro Island to take part in the assessment? How did you get back to Magnolia Town so quickly? At the same time, the others gathered around Makarov and asked. About this? What do you mean? We did go to Tenro Island to participate in the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. In short, it is difficult for me to explain what happened. You will know when you come out and take a look. After listening to the words of the members in the guild, Makarov scratched his cheek. He did not know how to explain it. In short, Irene's magic was magical. Even in this world of magic, Irene's magic was still very magical, so Makarov gave up on explaining. He planned to let everyone come out to take a look. There were some things that he could not explain, but they would understand after seeing them. Let's go out and take a look. Makarov and Wakaba looked at each other, then walked out of the gate of the Fairy Tale Guild together. When the two of them came out of the guild gate, what they saw was not the bustling streets of Magnolia Town in the past, but there were a wasteland and a stone tablet that burned like the fire of life in the center. The two of them looked into the distance, looking into the distance. It was an endless ocean, and there were no traces of a small town. This made the two of them believe that they had already left Magnolia Town. It was very likely that their guild was on an isolated island. What's going on? Makarov and Washba looked at each other, then the two of them went back to the guild in silence. How is the situation outside of Makarov? What exactly happened? Yes, yes. The members of the Fairy Tale looked at the silent Wakaba and Makarov then asked one after another. About this. Even if we use all our brain juice, it is difficult to describe the scene outside with words. In short, you will know when you go out and take a look. Wakaba and Makarov fell silent. The two of them were indeed unable to use words to describe the exaggerated scene they saw. It felt like the heavens had played a joke on them. In the blink of an eye, the Fairy Tale Guild had disappeared from the small town of Magnolia. It was really hard to say. Is it hard to describe with words? Let's go out and take a look. Hearing this, the people of the guild looked at each other. A group of people who did not believe, after listening to the words of Makarov and Wakaba, they all walked out of the guild. Then, everyone was shocked. Hey, hey, hey! What a joke! Where is this place? Where did the town go? The town disappeared, it turned into a sea. What the hell is going on? The mages of the fairy tale guild stood in front of the burning stone tablet and shouted in shock. They couldn't believe what they saw. Everyone! Calm down and listen to me. In fact, it is not that we have returned to the fairy tale guild from Tenro Island, but that everyone in the fairy tale guild has come to Tenro Island. Makarov watched as everyone ran outside and looked at everything before him. The panicking members sighed, and then their bodies gently floated up to the top of everyone's heads. Wrapped in golden magic, they floated in the air, and at the same time, they spoke to the guild masters. What kind of joke is this? We came to Tenro Island from Magnolia Town. The distance from Magnolia Town to Tenro Island is at least a few hundred kilometers, right? How much magic power does it take for us to cross such a distance in an instant, from Magnolia Town to Tenro Island? The group of fairy tale members felt incredible in their hearts. They were all in a mess in the sea breeze. They felt that their common sense of magic had been constantly collapsing over the years. In fact, Makarov had been in a mess just now. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed that there was such a magic in this world. Cough cough. In short, everyone, don't care about so many details. Let's celebrate together. The fairy tale has completed this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. Let's start the banquet happily together. Makarov coughed lightly after hearing everyone's words. Then, he smiled at everyone. Oh! For a time, the mages of the fairy tale guild, who were still in shock, immediately cried out when they heard Makarov say that the banquet was going to be held. At the mention of the banquet, everyone threw all the previous shock to the back of their minds. In any case, they couldn't figure it out with their brains. Since they couldn't figure it out, then they might as well not think about it. For a moment, the people of the fairy tale, the talented one, were drinking and chatting and continued to drink and chat. The fighter was still fighting, and everyone returned to their former appearance. Yes, the banquet of the fairy tale has never stopped every day. This is the atmosphere of other guild holidays, but this is the daily routine of the fairy tale guild. Cheers! Shuang! Makarov sat on the bar and gulped down his beer. He felt a cool sensation in his heart, and his mood was very good. So, Guild Master, who passed this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial? Wakaba eagerly leaned over to Makarov and asked with a smile. As the two of them asked. For a moment, the originally lively atmosphere had calmed down the entire fairy tale. Everyone held their breaths, quietly waiting for the fairy tale guild master. At the same time, they were also waiting for this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial main examiner, Makarov, to speak. After all, the result of this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial is related to the life and death of everyone. Hehe, do you want to know? Makarov looked at Macau and Wakaba. He immediately knew what the two were planning. He kept them in suspense, but didn't say it directly. Instead, he chuckled. Of course, of course. Wakaba and Macau smiled and nodded. It's not that I can't tell you, but the wine today. Hey, look, the wine in my cup is gone. Makarov raised the corners of his mouth, hinting at Wakaba and Macau. No, this could no longer be considered a hint. This was simply a naked indication. We'll pay for the wine. Both Wakaba and Kakao looked at the beer in Makarov's cup in pain. The two nodded and contracted all of Makarov's wine money for today. Yes, even if the fairy tale guild's guild master, Makarov, drank in the guild, he would still have to pay the money. After all, this thing requires raw materials to be used. Since you are so sincere, I will tell you in advance. The one who passed this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial is Evan Belzarian. After Makarov's conspiracy succeeded, he didn't waste any more words. He looked at Wakaba and Macau and smiled as he spoke. Yay! After hearing Makarov's words, Macau immediately called out loudly because he had placed his bets on Evan passing this year's S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. After this single task was settled, he would no longer need to work for the entire year next year. No, if he was a little more diligent, it would be enough for him to play for 2 years. I'm finished. As for Wakaba and the others, he saw the expressions of Irene, Urza, and the others who had become S-class mages all changed. Ha ha ha. I asked you to follow me to bet on Evan. You don't agree, are you happy now? How many times have I said it? Although I am not as strong as Evan and the others, I am a professional when it comes to gambling and luck. Macau laughed as he spoke smugly to Wakaba and the others. This bastard. After Wakaba and the others heard what Macau had to say, their eyes turned red and they clenched their fists. As well as Ezra Belzarian, Irene Belzarian, Altair Milkovich, and Laxus Driar. The above 5 have passed this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial. However, without waiting for Macau to be happy, Makarov continued. Ah! Hearing this, the smile on Macau's face instantly froze. Yay! At this time, Lion and Grey jumped up from the ground and laughed loudly. The two of them were escorting many people through. The smile instantly shifted from Macao's face. Chapter 94, Bouncing in front of the tomb, the first guild master. No, no, no. Guild master, did you make a mistake? How could there be so many people who passed this year's S-Class Mage promotion trial all of a sudden? This doesn't conform to the rules of our fairy tale's previous S-Class Mage promotion trial. It seems that not many people in our fairy tale guild have passed the S-Class Mage promotion trial in years. Markolov pulled Macau's arm and asked unwillingly. Yes. In the past, not many people have ever passed the S-Class Mage promotion trial. But isn't there one this year? They have to learn to improve and advance. Markolov put down the wine glass in his hand and looked at Macau with a smile. What is that? As the 4th guild master of the fairy tale, he had never heard of it. No. After listening to Makarov, Macau hugged his head and kneeled on the ground. Ha ha ha. Who told you to be so cocky? Why aren't you showing off? Wakaba and the others burst into laughter as they watched the miserable Macau hugging his head and kneeling on the ground. Their originally unbalanced hearts suddenly calmed down. Seeing that this cocky fellow, Macau, was losing money, it was even more delightful than them earning money. My life, it was just a moment ago when he ended. Macau's eyes were lifeless. He suddenly felt that his life was over. A small bet is good for the people, but a big bet is bad for the people. Kana looked at Macau, whose eyes were lifeless, and shook her head helplessly. Ha ha ha. Kana, you're too awesome. That's right, that's right. I predicted the outcome in one go. Sure enough, Kana's prediction is not wrong. Grey and Lion hugged each other and looked at Kana with a smile. Kana was silent when she heard Grey and Lion's words. Sometimes, the prophecy was too accurate and was not a good thing. Sigh. Kana sighed and put away the prediction card on her table. On it was her divination. The content of the divination was that she had passed the S-Class Mage promotion trial of the fairy tale and had the chance to become an S-Class Mage. As a result, the content of the prediction was hard to describe in a few words. Long live Kana! Long live Kana! Kana! Grey and Lion were still hugging each other, shouting long live Kana! Grey, Yeon, your clothes, your clothes! Oh no! When? Grey heard this and looked down. He looked at his empty body and was shocked. Damn it, it should be because we were too excited just now. Lion heard this and stroked his forehead. He had been careless. As expected, clothes are the eternal enemy of him and Grey. How many times have the two of you said not to take off your clothes when there are many people? Altair looked at the naked Grey and Lion and said helplessly. For this matter, Altair was also very helpless. She had already taught Grey and Lion many times. Unfortunately, these two guys did not listen to her at all. Hey! When Kana heard this, she turned around and looked at Altair, who was only wearing underwear and attracting the attention of many perverts in the guild. The corners of her eyes twitched slightly. In terms of taking off your clothes, you don't have the qualifications to talk about others, right? Kana looked at Altair, speechless. This is bad. I was too busy talking about Grey and Lion. I actually forgot to put on my own clothes. Altair heard this and was shocked. She quickly put on the coat that she had thrown on the ground. Tisk. After receiving Kana's reminder, Grey and Lion who were sitting at the bar counter turned their heads helplessly, looking as if they still wanted more. Who can help me beat up this perverted uncle? Kana watched the scene in front of her and the corners of her eyes twitched. Compared to the fairy tale, the three of you are actually more suitable to go to the diving club next door. Evan looked at the farce between Altair, Grey and Lion and silently complained in her heart. If Altair, Grey, and Lion go to the diving club next door, not only will they not be regarded as abnormal, but they can also quickly integrate with them. After all, compared to the demon tail, these three people are actually closer to the style of the other side. Hey! Macau, don't do anything stupid. Just as everyone in the guild was happily playing around. Following a series of wailing cries, Macau stood on the high ground. Yes, Macau climbed up to Mavis' tombstone. Me. I've had enough. Macau stood on a tombstone that was more than 3 meters tall and shed tears in the wind. Macau. Jump. Jump down quickly. Yes. Macau, jump down like a real man. Macau, do you dare to go to a shorter place? It was you who climbed up to the 3rd floor of the guild and then jumped down. That place is relatively high. How can the 3rd floor of the guild is considered high? Real men have already climbed to the Tower of Heaven, that place is considered high. Isn't that right? If you jump down from this 3-meter high stone tablet, we will all be afraid. Before we send you to the hospital, you will be gone. Below Macau were a group of the guild members who were watching the show. Macau imagined that the scene of a group of members persuading him not to jump did not happen. This group of people who did not mind the fun was constantly urging Macau to jump down from the stone tablet. What's more, it is recommended that Macau go to Tower of Heaven and jump down from there, because it is relatively high, and he will definitely not live if he jumps down. Don't you have any sympathy for me if you watch me lose everything? Macau looked at the guild members below him and shouted angrily. Yes. But not many. When the members of the guilds heard this, they looked at each other and replied in unison. You bunch of demons! When Macau heard this, tears flowed down his face, and his face was filled with pain. In fact, the words that attracted everyone just now, please don't do anything stupid. It was Macau who shouted it himself. After all, the other people in the guild only knew how to watch the show and would not be kind enough to persuade Macau. On the contrary, looking at Macau who was in pain, the people in the guild were all very happy. Macau, you jump later, I'll go first. Just as Macau was about to jump down from the 3-meter-tall stone tablet, Wakaba's voice sounded in his ear. He was standing at a higher place, on the rock wall next to the tomb of the first guild master, Mavis. It was about 5 or 6 meters away from the ground. This height was not too short for a mage. If one was not careful, it was possible to sprain one's ankle. I bet all my savings. That is the money I came to propose. Wakaba did not wait for everyone to ask, and began to talk about it. Who asked you? Give me a suggestion. Before you propose, go and ask the girl if she agrees. I don't want to only see you in prison in the future. It will be a disgrace to our fairy tea. Also, this is your own bet. Who are you blaming? The members of the guild looked at Wakaba with great clarity and shouted. Goodbye. Life. Wakaba said and was about to jump down from the rock wall. I won't see you again. At most, there will be some scratches. The members of the guild were not at all used to Wakaba and complained one by one. Hey! Wait! It was also during the time when Wakaba and Macau were still alive that Makarov walked out of the guild. He looked at Wakaba and Macau, and his heart trembled. Guild Master! After Wakaba and Macau heard Makarov's words, they glanced at each other. Their expressions were extremely moved. Sure enough, at the critical moment, only the guild master of the fairy tale guild, Makarov, would protect them. You two little brats! What are you doing in front of the tomb of the first guild master, Mavis? Before Wakaba and Macau were completely moved, Makarov instantly turned into a giant and beat down Wakaba and Macau who were causing trouble. Suddenly, Wakaba and Macau became obedient. Compared to jumping off the stone tablet, the guild master's fist was much heavier. Ha 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 ha! Immediately, the players of the fairy tale guild laughed. Speaking of which, in front of the tomb of the first guild master, Mavis, you are not qualified to talk about others like this, right? Evan looked at Makarov and said mercilessly. What Makarov is doing is no different from bungee jumping in front of the ancestral tomb. After Makarov heard Evan's words, his body trembled with guilt. I don't mind. It's been a long time. It hasn't been so lively before. Just as Makarov was feeling extremely guilty because of Evan's words, an ethereal voice entered Evan and Makarov's ears. When Makarov and Evan heard that voice, they were stunned. Chapter 95, Harvest and Growth. You are Evan and Makarov turned around at the same time. They saw a young girl with long blonde hair, dark green eyes, wearing a long white dress and bare feet. She looked like a fairy as she blinked her large eyes at Evan, Makarov, and the others. I like to be lively. When you aren't here, it's so boring. I'm so lonely. The young girl smiled happily at Evan and Makarov. Are you the first guild master, Senior Mavis? Evan looked at the girl in front of her. After comparing the image of the girl to the image of the two-dimensional paper person in his memory, he thought for a while and then asked. N. The young girl, the first guild master of the fairy tale, Mavis Soul, nodded adorably after hearing Evan's words. It's over. Guild master. The first guild master in heaven heard that you had a party in front of the first guild master's tomb. She was so angry that the first guild master's soul came down from the heaven hall to settle the score with you. Evan looked at the young girl and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. Although he knew that the first guild master was actually not dead, and the first guild master did not care about how the members of the fairy tale guild treated her grave at all, she still smiled and patted Makarov's shoulder, deliberately speaking. What? What? Yes. I'm sorry. The first guild master. After hearing Evan's words, Makarov, the little old man, trembled in fear. Cold sweat kept pouring out of his forehead. He immediately bowed towards the young girl and begged for forgiveness. It doesn't matter. I'm not angry. After hearing Makarov's words, the two pairs of small white wings on her head that looked like ears moved slightly. At the same time, she bent down and looked down at Makarov's face, smiling as she spoke. Guild master, you know, most girls say that they are not angry, but they are actually super angry. At this time, Evan added fuel to the fire. Really, sorry. First guild master, please forgive me. After listening to Evan's words, Makarov deeply agreed with Ivan's words. Because Makarov had experienced it before, and in fact, Precht was such a person. Thus, Makarov bowed even deeper towards Mavis. No. I really don't care. Rather, it would be better to say that the fairy tale you are currently leading is what I imagined in my heart. This is what the fairy tale should look like. Makarov, you are really outstanding. You are even more outstanding than me and Precht. After hearing Makarov's words, Mavis waved her little hand at Makarov, her eyes sparkling with stars as she praised Makarov. In fact, Mavis truly believes that Makarov is very outstanding. She also sincerely believes that Makarov is more suitable to become the guild master of the fairy tale than her and Precht. Perhaps no one in the world is more suitable to lead the fairy tale guild than Makarov. I'm really flattered by what you said. Makarov raised his head and looked at the seemingly genuine Mavis, finally heaving a sigh of relief in his heart. Then, Makarov frowned because he sensed that something was wrong. So, Evan, from just now, what are you adding oil to the fire by my side? Makarov, who had reacted, turned around with a fake smile and roared at the place where Evan had been standing. However, when Makarov turned around, Evan had already disappeared. At this time, Makarov finally realized that he had been tricked by Evan. Evan! Makarov looked at Evan, who had disappeared without a trace, and let out a furious roar. Ha ha ha! Mavis looked at the enraged Makarov and laughed out loud. As expected, this is what family feels like. At the same time, after Evan teased Makarov a little, he went to the deserted forest of Tenro Island and began to look up the gains he had obtained from an S-class mage. To put it simply, this S-class mage promotion trial had given Evan a bountiful harvest. The first was the 3 10-year mission badges that she had obtained from Ziref. These 3 missions were very magical. Evan had not yet started the follow-up missions. As long as she agreed to do it, she would automatically receive these 3 mission badges. Next was the high-level mission issued by the system. Evan had also completed it and automatically obtained a 10-year mission badge from the system. In the blink of an eye, Evan had gained a huge amount of money, directly adding 4 more 10th grade mission badges. At the same time, Evan finally understood why the fairy tale quest rewards were so generous, directly giving him a 10 years quest rank medal. This is another addition to the league to participate in the fairy tale S-class mage promotion trial. It was not excessive to give a 10 years quest medal to Ziref and Mavis. Now, in Evan's hands, there were 4 10 years quest badges. Evan did not hesitate and directly used her 2 10 years quest badges, upgrading the additional magic and separation magic from level 9 to level 10. In an instant, Evan's magic template was corrected and corrected. Magic. Magic, level 10, plus. Caster Magic, LV 10, plus. Holder Magic, LV 10, plus. In other words, the current Evan, whether it was Caster Magic or Holder Magic, was already at the level of a shield. If placed in the Alvarez Empire, just magic alone could directly rank him as the Spriggan 12. There would be no problem at all. In addition to that, Evan also had an incomparably powerful body technique, sword technique, domineering aura, and the fruit ability of her own attribute magic. At this point, Evan's strength can be considered to have finally graduated from the guild. Yes, growing to the level of a Spriggan 12, he has only just reached the level of having just graduated from the guild. As for the remaining 2 10 years quest badges, Evan did not use them. Instead, he planned to save them up and wait until he completed a few SS class quest first, raising the ability of the Devil Fruit from level 8 to level 9. Using the power of the 10 years quest medal, she directly raised the ability of the Devil Fruit to level 10. Only in this way can he fully use the power of the medal, instead of wasting his ability. Moreover, Evan has a hunch that when he raises the ability of the Devil Fruit to level 10, he will get a qualitative leap, and will get a huge upgrade in essence and life level. Including haki, physical skills, and swordsmanship, Evan could feel that when he raised these levels to level 10, they would all become his instinct. As for resistance, Evan did not intend to raise it to level 10. It was good that the resistance level was enough. Moreover, it would cost too much to raise all 5 resistance to level 10. It would cost Evan 5 10 years quest level other medals, which were half 100-year mission badges. In Evan's opinion, this was completely unnecessary. He planned to spend 5 SS class badges, and he needed to save up the materials under him to synthesize a 100 years quest medal to make a further breakthrough. I finally feel that I have become stronger. It seems that my efforts are worth it. Evan felt the power in his body and sighed. The reason why he, Evan, was so strong was all because of the hard work he had done to increase his strength. Evan, let's eat together. Just as Evan was sighing with emotion, Irene's voice sounded in his ear. It was Irene and Urza looking for him. I'm here. When Evan heard the calls of Irene and Urza, he immediately turned into a golden light and flew towards Irene. Yes, for Irene, whether it is an S-class mage promotion trial or something else, it is not important. What is important is to bring the child together to go on a picnic. This is the most important thing in Irene's eyes. The so-called S-class mage promotion trial of the fairy tale is just for her to walk together with Evan and Urza and get it by the way. In Irene's eyes, the dream of others is a small matter in her eyes. Chapter 96, Return to Magnolia. The sky is clear and the sun is shining brightly. Evan, Irene, and Urza sat in the tree forest, enjoying the tranquility after the S-class mage promotion trial. About an hour later, after Evan, Irene, and Urza finished eating, the 3 of them returned to the guild on the empty ground in front of the Mavis grave. At this moment, the guild was unusually lively. Grey, Lion, I'm counting on you. Please do us a little favor and leave us some money. The 2 old members of the guild, Macau and Wakaba, were kneeling on the ground with their knees. They looked like they were going down from their seats and were running naked towards Grey and Lion, begging. What kind of scene is this? The corners of Evan's eyes twitched slightly. With a gravity wave, Macau and Wakaba, as well as Lion and Grey, the 2 streaking perverts, were thrown out of the guild. Who? After clearing out the things that stung the eyes, Evan slowly let out a sigh of relief. I won't admit my identity as an S-class mage. This year's S-class mage promotion trial, I will definitely not admit it. I want to be fair and square. I want to defeat an S-class mage who is currently an S-class mage, and then become an S-class mage in fairy tale. After Evan cleaned up Grey, Lion, and the others, he heard Laxus's roar coming from the front of the fairy tale guild. Hey! Evan curiously walked towards the bar counter. He saw that Laxus was facing off against Makarov, and the 2 seemed to be in conflict. Since I have already given out the qualifications to become an S-class mage, I will not take it back. Makarov sat on the bar counter and shook his head at Laxus. The fact that he had given so many S-class mage slots was already a child's play for this year's S-class mage promotion trial. If he were to take back the S-class mage due to the disapproval of the guild members, then this year's S-class mage promotion trial would truly become a farce. Of course, the most important thing is, the first guild master of the fairy tale, Mavis, was shaking her little feet and sitting beside Makarov, smiling as he watched Makarov deal with the guild conflicts. Under the supervision of his seniors, Makarov's attitude became even more resolute. He had to establish his prestige as a guild leader. Although Makarov had just begun to establish his prestige, no matter how one looked at it, it was a little too late. Damn it! After listening to Makarov's words, he was extremely unhappy, but there was nothing he could do. To put it simply, you intend to take the test again next year, and then become an S-class mage in an upright manner, right? At this moment, Evan, who had returned to the guild, walked to the side of Laxus and asked him in a soft voice. Of course. I don't need this kind of S-class mage certification. I want to rely on my own strength to obtain the guild's S-class mage promotion trial. Laxus nodded after listening to what Evan had to say. If he was Laxus, if he somehow obtained the certification of an S-class mage, others would say that he had been taken care of by Makarov, the guild master of Fairy Tale, his biological grandfather. He, Laxus, did not need anyone to take care of him, nor did he need any connections. He could still rely on his own strength to become an S-class mage of the Fairy Tale Guild. But have you ever thought about what would happen if you fail next year? Once you pass. The reason why you can get the S-class mage promotion trial this year is because your grandfather is a guild master. In the future, when everyone sees you, they will tell you. Look. This guy is the idiot who got the S-class mage promotion trial by relying on grandfather and didn't cherish it. In the end, he didn't pass the test. Laxus, you don't want others to say that to you either, do you? Evan looked at the stubborn Laxus and suddenly thought of something. He smiled at him. Are you kidding me? How could I not pass the test of a mere S-class mage promotion trial? I am Laxus Dree. With my strength, how could I not pass the S-class mage promotion trial of the guild? There is no such possibility. After listening to Evan's words, Laxus' expression first changed, then he proudly said. After all, he had even defeated the S-class criminal that the Magic Council offered. According to the standards of the Magic Council, he was already a proper S-class mage. If it was any other guild, they might have already made an exception and granted him the certification of an S-class mage. Is that so? But Laxus, have you ever thought about who the S-class mage promotion trial of the Fairy Tale next year would be? First of all, I have to tell you that I don't have time to help you take the exam next year. Evan smiled when he heard his confident words. Then, he expressed that he did not have time to help him take the exam next year. Then, he turned to look at Altair, who was sitting with her back against the bar counter. Me too. I have a mission to investigate. I probably have no time to help you take the exam for the next few years. Altair, who was at the side, seemed to have understood something after being looked at by Evan. She said to Laxus. I don't have time either. Urza and Evan had been together for so many years, and they had long been in sync. They instantly understood Evan's meaning. Without any hints from Evan, HR directly said. Laxus did not expect that Evan, Altair, and even Urza had things to do, so he had no choice but to look at Gildarts, who was drinking beer at the bar. Don't look at me. I haven't planned to return to the guild in recent years. Compared to the outside world, the guild is too dangerous. When he felt that Laxus was looking at him, he shook his head. He had already been traumatized by Irene. He was ready to go on a trip and erase the painful memories in his mind. So to sum it up, the only person who can help you with the assessment next year is. As Evan spoke, she shifted her gaze to Irene, who was standing behind him with a smile on her face. It doesn't matter. Blondie little rascal who plays with electricity. Next year, the year after that. In the future, you will live in this world for dozens of years, 100 years. I will gladly accept the duty of Fairy Tale as an S-class mage tutor. I will help you complete the examination. When Irene felt the gaze of Evan, her beautiful face revealed a heart-shaking smile. Irene looked at Laxus and said affectionately. Laxus looked at the smiling Irene and felt a burst of panic in his heart. His body could not help but tremble. What Irene said, next year, after year, after year, in the next few decades, will help him complete the assessment, meaning that not only will he fail to pass the S-class mage promotion trial next year, but even in the year after and the year after, as long as she is still alive in this world, she will pull Laxus into her whole life, living in this world for decades or even centuries, he will never be able to pass the S-class mage promotion trial of the Fairy Tale. If it was before Irene showed her strength, maybe Laxus would still be stubborn, but when Irene directly moved hundreds of kilometers away, the fairy tale guild located in the small Magnolia town, directly moved to Tenro Island now. Laxus, who deeply understood the huge gap between himself and Irene, was terrified. Well, okay, let's do it this way. Laxus turned around and lowered his head. He stopped talking nonsense about the problems that had occurred during his S-class mage promotion trial. When Laxus saw Irene so easily, he moved the fairy tale guild, which was located far away in Magnolia town, to Tenro Island, which was hundreds of kilometers away. Laxus had already cut off his desire to fight for the strongest throne of the fairy tale. He could no longer rebel. He didn't need to think about it for the first time in his life. Secondly, he could think about it a little. Although Evan and Urza were there, it was almost impossible. Looks like there are no more problems with Laxus. Evan looked at the silent Laxus and smiled. Since the problem could not be solved, then it would be better to solve the problem of the person who had the problem. As long as there was no problem with Laxus, then wouldn't the problem that he raised be solved? Speaking of which, are we going back? Makarov looked at Evan, who had solved the problem, with a gratified expression in his eyes. He thought in his heart, when Evan was a little older, would he be able to remove his duties as a guild master of the Fairy Guild and retire in peace? No, speaking of which, perhaps Irene is also very suitable to become the next guild master of the Fairy Tale Guild. As Makarov thought this, he fell into deep thought. Then let's go back. After Irene heard Makarov's words, she exchanged a glance with Evan. Then, she spoke in a flat tone. At the same time, she used the magic staff in her hand to lightly tap the ground of the guild. Boom! With a burst of dazzling light. In an instant, the Fairy Tale Guild disappeared from Tenro Island. At the same time, the Kingdom of Fiori, Magnolia Town. A few of the townspeople who were about to find the fairy tale to issue missions looked at the location of the Fairy Tale Guild in their memories. After turning into the empty flat ground in front of them, they fell into deep thought. It can't be that the mages of the fairy tale did something shocking again and ran away overnight, right? Perhaps this kind of thing would not happen to other guilds, but if it was the fairy tale, it would feel very reasonable. Just as the townspeople was thinking. As the ground lit up, in a flash, a small 3-story building with the words FT printed on it appeared in front of him. Am I seeing things? The townspeople looked at the Fairy Tale Guild that had suddenly appeared, their eyes filled with disbelief. Chapter 97, New Year. With a roar, Evan and the others returned to Magnolia Town. Speaking of which, did I forget something? Forget it. The things I have forgotten are probably not important. Evan sat in front of the guild bar. He looked around at the members of the guild. After thinking for a moment, he couldn't remember what he had forgotten, so he stopped thinking about it. At the same time, on the holy land of the fairy tale, Tenro Island, Grey and Lion, who were holding the black basketball, and Macau and Wakaba, who were begging for mercy, looked at the disappearing guild and fell into deep thought. The guild was here just now, right? Grey looked at Wakaba and asked. Probably, maybe. Wakaba was silent for a moment, then used his dry lips to speak softly. So, they went back on their own, right? We were left on Tenro Island by them. Lion held the basketball against the black piece and felt the cold wind at night. He fell into deep thought. Here comes the question. What should we do now? After thinking for a while, Macau asked the 3 people in front of him. The crowd did not answer, but remained silent. I remember that the guild master and the others came by boat. Since they used magic to go back, the ship that the guild master and the others are on should still be near the island. At this time, Macau, whose head was still bright, suggested. All right, let's do it this way. Lion, Grey and Wakaba nodded in agreement after hearing what Macau said. Speaking of which one of you knows how to sail? Wakaba had a cigarette in his mouth as he asked the people around him. Ha ha ha. Hearing Wakaba's question, Macau, Lion and Grey all laughed. Not at all. The same. The north is full of icebergs. There is no need for a ship to be used. Wakaba, Lion and Grey exchanged a few words and answered. Is that so? Is this too bad? I don't know how to. Macau looked at the 3 people who were laughing and laughed. Then, the atmosphere between the 4 became extremely serious. Half a month later, close to the end of the year, Evan and Urza brought Irene out to buy some things. To put it simply, Evan had always seen the three of them wear the same set of clothes. It was a little strange, so he planned to buy some clothes for the three of them. Although the three of them were only products of Irene's high-level magic, after all, they had been together for so many years that they had some feelings. Speaking of which, it's a little weird. After Irene changed into a new set of clothes, she scratched her cheek. Because her original body used to wear a set of same clothes, now that she wore a new set of clothes, she had the illusion that she was wearing a body outside her body. As for Urza, she was excitedly swinging the rolling pin in her hand. This was her new weapon. At the same time, she was muttering, "It's this feeling. This feeling is amazing." Irene was still silent. She only wanted a scabbard that Evans promised to give her as a New Year's gift. "I don't have enough money." Evan used the remaining money to customize a set of armor for Urza, then bought a gorgeous dress that looked very suitable for Irene, and then he did not have much money left. In order to complete the quest quickly, Evan did not care about the feelings of the surrounding environment at all. So much so that after he completed every task, a large amount of money was deducted and used as compensation. The remaining money was already not much. Although Evan himself did not care much about money. In fact, like Evan, there was also goldarts. The total amount of quests he completed every year was calculated by 100 million, but now he was still living in the small wooden house outside Magnolia Town. It was only because most of the money he completed the quest was used to compensate for the construction damage and the cost of hiring the construction team. That was why there was a rumor that the Fairy Tale was a guild that supported all the construction teams in the continent. Fortunately, the Fairy Tale was indeed generous. Every time they did something wrong, they would compensate the residents with a lot of money. Many of the townspeople even made a small profit, so there were no complaints from the residents. This was also the reason why the Fairy Tale had received so many missions. Just as Evan, Urza, and Irene were preparing to go home with all kinds of New Year goods they had bought. Along with the sound of water flowing, 4 strange people crawled out of the river beside them. Enemy attack. Protect. Irene looked at the strange man who crawled out of the river like a drowned rat. She immediately stood in front of Evan and Urza, carefully on guard. "What enemy attack? Look clearly who I am." The 4 people who climbed out of the river looked at Irene with a grim smile, and then revealed the mettle of their guild. "Not good, young master, there are enemies sneaking into our side." Irene looked at the badges of the Fairy Tale Guild on the 4 people and immediately turned around, looking at Evan in shock. "It doesn't matter, Irene. These are not enemies." At this time, Evan also saw who the 4 people in front of him were. He smiled and pulled Irene behind him. Then he walked to the front of the 4 drenched chickens and asked, "Isn't this Macau, Wakaba, Grey, and Lion? We haven't seen each other for a few days, why have you all jumped into the river? Is it your family that owes you water fees, or is it more popular to swim in the river now? Winter swimming my ass. Why do you think we ended up in such a miserable state?" Macau looked at Evan with a fake smile and asked. "I don't know." Evan thought for a moment and shook her head. "Let me give you a hint. Guess who threw us out of the guild when we were on Tenro Island?" Wakaba reminded Evan at this time. "Ah." Evan only reacted after getting the hint from Wakaba. "By the way, I thought I had forgotten something. It turned out that I had forgotten the 4 of you. I'm really sorry." Evan looked at Wakaba and the other 3 people and suddenly realized. "You just remembered it has been half a month. Do you know how we got here in the past half month?" Wakaba, Macau, Lion, and Grey shouted in unison after hearing Evan's words. "Regarding this matter, it is indeed my problem. I am really sorry. How about this? I will compensate you with this 10,000 jewels. Go and drink a cup of hot soup to warm up." As Evan spoke, he placed the remaining 10,000 jewels into Wakaba's hand. Then, he smiled and waved at the 4 of them, saying, "That's it then. Goodbye." After saying that, Evan seemed to have thought of something and gave her blessings to the 4 of them. "Oh right, I wish you all a Happy New Year." "Oh! Happy New Year! Happy New Year!" Hearing this, Wakaba, Macau, and the others immediately gave their blessings to Evan. At the same time, they looked at Urza, Irene, and the others as well. Then, the few of them waved goodbye and returned to their respective homes. Wakaba and Macau held the 10,000 jewels that Evan had given them in their hands as they walked towards their homes happily. Halfway there, their figures suddenly stopped. Something is wrong. This is 10,000 jewels, right? Didn't we agree that it would cost at least 100,000 jewels? Yes. Yes. That's why. Bastard Evan, we were tricked by him again. Wakaba and Macau finally reacted, tears falling from their eyes. Chapter 98, Since we can't tell the difference, let's kill them all. Then, Evan and the others passed the New Year's Day in Magnolia Town. He had a New Year's Eve dinner with Irene and Urza. After Evan and the others had finished the Fairy Tale S-Class Mage promotion trial, they had rested in Magnolia Town for about a month. At this point, the year 774 had quietly passed. The time came to the year 775, and it was about 2.5 years before the year 777 of the year that Natsu and the others passed through the Eclipse Gate. After the end of the year, Evan was ready to leave to investigate the matter of the Tower of Heaven. At the same time, Makarov went to look for Evan. The matter you asked me to investigate has some progress, but it is not optimistic. Over the past few days, the Magic Council has continuously destroyed several strongholds of the Magic Order that sold children. Unfortunately, we do not know if the Magic Order destroyed by the Magic Council is the one you are talking about. They are tight-lipped about the whereabouts of the children. Some extreme members of the Order committed suicide when they saw the people from the Magic Council, leaving behind some who were not clear about the internal affairs of the Order. I heard that they could learn powerful magic that was not available in the city, so the lake was smeared into the small shrimp of the Order. Evangelist. He said, according to my speculation, the magic order that you mentioned could hide itself so well while moving on a large scale across the continent, so that the Magic Council could not find any clues. The things and background involved behind it are very huge. Makarov stood in front of Evan, looking helpless. I know. Evan nodded slightly after hearing Makarov's words. He had previously asked Makarov to investigate the matter of Tower of Heaven. He had the mentality that it would be best if he could obtain some information, and it did not matter if he could not obtain any information. After all, the person behind the Magic Order was most likely the second guild master of the Fairy Tale, Precht, and the person in charge of the public, was also the former director of the Bureau of Magical Development, Brain. Whether it was Precht or Brain, who could fool Altair into a corner, both of them were people who did things flawlessly. Evan even felt that the group of fanatical believers of the Magic Order did not know who they were working for. They even thought that they were summoned by Ziref's undead to their deaths. They were chosen by the great dark magic scholar. How troublesome! Evan frowned. The longer the time dragged on, the more children would be persecuted. The best thing he could do was to completely end this year's matter at the theme park. In short, let's put this matter aside for now. Apart from that, I have already completed the matter of you asking me to help you contact the Magic Council. Yajima said that there are a lot of missions that have been suppressed in the Magic Evaluation Hall that no one else is going to do. If you can help them settle it, it will really be a great help. Makarov sighed. He was also very helpless about the matter of the Magic Order. If the other party was a mobile unit with the entire Ishgar as a unit that spanned across several countries, it was unknown how many large evil organizations there were inside. The most terrifying thing is that there are dozens of such evil organizations in Ishgar. Some people claim to be the descendants of dark magic scholar Ziref, some claim to have been summoned by Ziref's soul, and some even claim to be the descendants of Ziref. Probably, Ziref himself doesn't know when he has so many disciples. The most speechless thing is that Ziref's goal has always been to kill me. He has been living well in this world, but because of the problem of calming the curse on him, those who are related to him don't live well. And this group of evil organizations with Ziref's flag is to revive Ziref. Even if one day Ziref really died happily like Ziref had imagined, and then this group of unfilial people who claimed to be Ziref's disciples and grandchildren really succeeded in reviving Ziref. Presumably, the first thing Ziref would do when he woke up would be to destroy this group of evil organizations with his name in a fit of anger. Okay. Evan nodded after listening to Makarov. In short, I will report to the Magic Council. Evan had her own way of dealing with these evil organizations. Because the fairy tale mission was not enough to keep Evan from upgrading, Evan could not directly go to the major guilds to accept missions. This would cause a guild war. Although Evan was not afraid, some of the guild leaders of the major guilds were friends of Makarov, and some of them were even great seniors who went out from the fairy tale. Evan could not offend these people, so she directly ran to the upper organizations of the major guilds, which was the Magic Council, to accept missions. She also used the Magic Council that covered the entire continent to investigate the Tower of Heaven. This way, Evan would not delay. Originally, Evan thought that the Magic Council would refuse, but she did not expect the Magic Council to agree so quickly. This was something Evan did not expect. In fact, at this moment, the Magic Council was having an important meeting with Evan. You said that Evan, who has the name of Collapsing Star, is coming to help us. The Dean of the Magic Council touched his round belly and asked in disbelief. Yes. Yajima bowed and nodded slightly after listening to the director of the Magic Council. It was not easy for me to contact Makarov. Ahem, I mean, contact the Guild Master of the Fairy Tale Guild, one of the 10 Wizard Saints, Makarov. Our Magic Council has a lot of missions in the recent years, right? However, we don't have enough powerful mages to kill them, but that was before. Now, we have the power to kill them. Yajima said as he bowed and looked at all the council members. Of course, the merit belongs to us. After saying that, Yajima seemed to think of something and added. I agree. Agreed. Agreed. It's hard to disagree. The council members did not listen to the first part of the conversation. After all, it was related to the fairy tale. They had already made up their minds that no matter what Yajima said, they would find a random reason to reject it. However, the council members heard the last part of Yajima very clearly, so they all agreed with the proposal of Yajima and let the professionals deal with the matters of the order. At the same time, since we can't tell which one is the Dark Guild, then let's get rid of all the illegal Dark Guild on the continent. Evan made a decision. Since the teachings of the Dark Guilds were the same, all of them were using Zeref to pull the big flag, so it was hard to tell who belonged to whom. Therefore, Evan was too lazy to work as a detective to slowly investigate. According to the style of the fairy tale, they were all sent flying. It just so happened that Evan was not good at anything other than fighting. It could only be said that the nightmare of the Dark Guild of the continent of Ishgar had arrived. Chapter 99, Entering the Magic Council. At this point, he had left the matter of slowly investigating the Magic Council to Altair. He went to the Magic Council to report and was prepared to act according to the Magic Council's information. The next day, at 8 o'clock in the morning, Evan arrived at the door of the Magic Council. When Evan arrived, he saw a short old man smiling at him. The short old man in front of him did not have much magic power in his body, and even among the regular members of the fairy tale, he was not very outstanding. However, Evan did not underestimate the old man in front of her because of this. It was only because Evan clearly knew the identity of the old man in front of her. He was one of the members of the Magic Council, and also the best friend of the current fairy tale guild, Makarov. Hello, Senior Yajima. Evan came to the front of the Yajima horse and bowed to greet the senior. Well, you are Evan, right? I heard Makarov say a lot about you. Seeing you today, you are indeed a talented person. You are a good child. Yajima held his hand on the back of his horse and looked Evan up and down. He smiled gently. Because of the filter from Makarov, no matter which aspect he looked at Evan from, he felt that she was extremely perfect. Senior Yajima is also. Seeing Senior Yajima's current energetic appearance, I can already imagine that when you were young, you were also one of the most outstanding mages in the magic world. Evan's words were sincere. When Yajima was young, he was also a famous mage on the continent. Otherwise, he would not have been able to enter the Magic Council as a representative. Haha, you too, you too. For a moment, Yajima and Evan complimented each other. You brat, you speak much more than Makarov. I originally thought that a genius magister like you, who became famous at a young age, would be like Laxus. Seeing you today, I feel much more at ease. A moment later, the eyes that were originally closed slowly opened and looked at Evan in shock. Originally, Yajima was afraid that Evan was like Laxus who did not know how to be tactful and flexible. He was a proud and arrogant young genius magister. However, after seeing Evan today, he found out that Evan was the kind of magister who knew how to change. Where? Evan smiled after listening to Yajima. In short, I have sorted out all the missions that have not been cleared out in the Magic Council for many years. Let's make it clear first. Because the Magic Council does not directly hire a guild mages to carry out the mission, you will be working on the Magic Council for this period of time. But don't worry, the reward will definitely not be small. It's just that the merit will be counted on the head of the Magic Council. In other words, there will be a period of blank space on the calendar of the mage Evan Belzarian. Does it matter? Yajima asked Evan with his hands on his back. For many mages, they value their own background very much. After all, this is related to their reputation. For powerful mages, money is no longer important to them. Obtaining it is a reputation. This is also the reason why Evan has always been thinking about the title of the strongest guild in the Kingdom of Fiori. This is what I asked the president to enter the Magic Council for experience. How can he dare to ask for any merit? Evan did not care about the so-called achievements or even the rewards. He only needed the mission badge. Ha ha ha. As expected of someone recommended by Makarov. You have such a mentality. No wonder you are so young and have such amazing strength. Don't worry. Although your career history will have nearly a year of blank time, this does not affect you much. You are still young. Moreover, this year's 10 Grand Mages, if there are no accidents, will definitely belong to you. Yajima blinked at Evan and quietly informed her. As for why Yajima could be so sure, saying that this year's 10 Wizard Saints would definitely belong to Evangelist. This involved some dirty things between the members of the Magic Council. It was hard to say, and could only hint. After all, they had received the merits that Evan had given them. It was more or less like eating people's mouths and taking shorthands. It was not too easy for the council members to decide on a 10 Wizard Saints. In any case, just Evan's achievement of crusade against Dracula's Hyborion was enough to make Evan one of the 10 Wizard Saints. Haha, I'm interested in 10 Wizard Saints. Evan chuckled after hearing Yajima's words. He was not interested in the title of 10 Wizard Saints. Quest, obtain the title of 10 Wizard Saints. You have won the Magic Council's 10 Wizard Saints selection this year. You have obtained the title of Ishgar's 10 Wizard Saints. You have received a 10 years quest badge. Senior Yajima, please help me win this year's selection for the 10 Wizard Saints. Evan did not expect to trigger a sudden mission after meeting Yajima. Moreover, it was a mission related to the title of 10 Wizard Saints. His face immediately turned serious as he looked at Yajima. Don't worry about this. This old man still has this bit of ability. Yajima looked at Evan's serious expression and smiled. In short, from today on, you are the captain of the Magic Council against the Magic Council. Work hard and do your job well. When you get used to the work here, you can take over Makarov's job. Makarov is too tired, and it's time to retire. Come with me now. I'll take you to get the uniform of the Magic Council, and take you to your office. Yajima said, leading the way for Evan. Okay, Senior Yajima. After listening to Yajima's words, Evan was stunned. It was obvious that Yajima misunderstood his intention to come to the Magic Council to study. He didn't come to the Magic Council to learn management skills. Instead, he really wanted to destroy the Magic Council. As for the position of the head of the Magic Council, he really didn't have any thoughts. Even if he was given a 10 years quest medal as a reward, then only then could he consider taking over Makarov as the new guild master of the fairy tale. However, he would probably return the position of the guild master to Makarov immediately after becoming the guild master, just like guildarts. However, Evan didn't explain anything about Yajima's misunderstanding. He followed behind Yajima and walked towards his office. At this moment, Evan was very respectful towards Yajima from the bottom of her heart. This little old man in front of her really cared a lot about the fairy tale. His contribution to the development of the Fairy Tale Guild in some ways was no less than the current head of the Fairy Tale Guild Master, Makarov. Chapter 100, Evan, the Captain of the Custody Enforcement Unit. The Magic Council has a special crusade against the Zentopia Church. It is a team that specializes in investigating the Zentopia Church. There are about 100 members in the team, 10 people in the team, 3 people in a small team. Each team has a small captain, and each team has a middle vice-captain. As for the captain of the Custody Enforcement Unit of the Zentopia Church, it can also be called the captain of the team. Last year, he failed to meet the requirements of the council members because of his bad work, and then he was removed. Originally, the members of the Custody Enforcement Unit thought that the Custody Enforcement Unit captain of the Magic Council would definitely pick one out of the 10 vice-captains this year. However, what made everyone shocked was that the high-level members of the Magic Council had suddenly sent someone to their Custody Enforcement Unit as the captain, which made the Custody Enforcement Unit dissatisfied. At this moment, in the office of the group of captains. Speaking of which, when will our captain who landed in the air come? It can't be that he was scared silly, so he didn't dare to come. The one who spoke was a young man with Mohican hair named Keith. He was a little angry and seemed to be disdainful of the approaching captain of the Custody Enforcement Unit. Jimmy was one of the 10 captains of the custody enforcement unit, and he was also one of the captains who refused to accept the fact that the members of the Magic Council had surrendered to the captain of the custody enforcement unit. In his eyes, the group of council members who only knew how to blindly command in the rear could not understand the horror of the Magic Order. Against these members of the Magic Order who had been brainwashed by Zerev, they had to be determined to die. If the people who came did not know anything and became the captain of the custody enforcement unit of the Magic Council, they would be a burden. If they blindly commanded, they would die. Keith, calm down. The one who spoke to Keith was a man wearing a pair of glasses and a long whip. He was also a captain of the custody enforcement unit. After Captain Jobson left, you must be the happiest person, right? After all, as long as Jobson left, you would become a captain. It's a pity that the council has a captain. You didn't expect this, did you? Hearing this, Keith turned to look at the vice-captain named Rahal, who calmed him down, and laughed coldly. Keith. After listening to Keith, a trace of dissatisfaction flashed across Rahal's face, and he saw that the two of them were about to erupt into a fierce quarrel. The two of you, stop arguing. The other team leaders looked at the two who seemed to be arguing again and immediately advised. Pata, pata, pata. At this moment, there was a burst of footsteps. Evan and 2 civil officials from the Magic Council entered the meeting room of the captain of the custody enforcement unit. Hey! At this moment, all of the captains, who were originally planning to quarrel, stopped and looked at Evan. Captain of the Magic Council Custody Enforcement Unit, the current captain of the Magic Council Custody Enforcement Unit, Evan Berzelian. The 2 civil servants looked at the team captain resting in the room and introduced Evan to everyone. You are the new team captain? Are you kidding? Isn't he still a child? Keith threw down the arguing Rahal and walked to Evan. He looked at Evan and said in shock. Haven't you heard of me? Evan looked at Keith with a puzzled expression. He should be quite famous in the Magic Council. Are you that famous? Keith was stunned after hearing Evan. Evan. This name sounds familiar to me. Could it be that you are Evan of the Collapsing Star? Rahal looked at Evan and seemed to have thought of something. A trace of shock flashed across his face. Evan looked at the shocked Rahal and nodded imperceptibly. He had said that he was still very famous. This kind of thing that was looked down upon because of his youth should not happen to him. Ha ha ha. You said that this little bean is that Evan of the Collapsing Star? Don't joke around. I heard that Evan is 8 meters tall. He has the bloodline of the giant tribe and the ancient dragon. With a slight movement, the world will shake. After listening to Rahal, Keith laughed and said something that shocked Evan. That is true. After all, it is said that Evan is elusive and no one has ever seen his true face. According to some rumors, I heard that the Evan of the Collapsing Star has a very mysterious background. Other than the council members, no one knows what his surname is and what he looks like. However, I heard from the internal information that the Evan of the Collapsing Star would never step on the ground because he disdained to walk on his feet like ordinary people, so he always flew in the air and let others look up at him. Towards some existences that he disliked or did not look up to him, existences that made him feel disrespectful, he would directly use the caster magic, Collapsing Star, completely destroying the other party's body and soul. He is an extremely terrifying and violent magister. At this time, Rahal nodded and added. Let me see the back of your hand. As if he had thought of something, he walked in front of Evan and sized up Evan's hands. This is indeed a fake. I heard that one of Evan's hands had the insignia of their guild printed on it, and the other hand had the words Collapsing Star on it. Each line represented 100 lives. The back of this guy's hand was clean. He was obviously not the mage who killed people like flies. At most, his name was just the same. Moreover, there were so many people called Evan on this continent. It was obvious that you were thinking too much this time. After examining the back of Evan's hand, Keith smiled and looked at Rahal proudly. Why don't we listen to what you are talking about? Evan was a little speechless after hearing their words. The reason why the badge on the back of his hand disappeared was because Yajima told Evan to try not to expose his identity. Although Evan thought that as long as he used his signature meteorite, it would be difficult to hide his identity, and he did not want to hide his identity. However, for Yajima's sake, he added a magic that only the guild can see to the metal of the fairy tale on his hand. As for the back of the other hand, it was full of words, recording the number of people he killed. This was pure nonsense. Because Evan was ruthless to the dark mage, it seemed that in order to protect Evan or his family, Representative Yajima deliberately hid Evan's appearance. Although Evan believed that even if the dark mages wanted to find trouble with his family, they would only be courting death. Irene was not so easy to talk to him. If she met him, she would at most be beaten half disabled. If she met Irene. However, Yajima was kind, so Evan could not say anything. However, after hiding it, the rumors about it were too exaggerated. Although it is true that no one has ever seen his true face, it is true that he always throws meteorites down from the sky. But what is a height of more than 8 meters? His body flows with the bloodline of the giant tribe and the ancient dragon? He disdains to walk like a mortal with his feet and always flies in the sky to let others look up to him? Will he throw meteorites to kill people he likes or not? Is he that kind of person? None of this has anything to do with him. His meteorites were all targeted by the crusade, but he controlled his strength very well. None of them were smashed to death, only half dead. Although compared to the later generation of Natsu, the rumors and titles of Evan were much stronger. At least his nickname had his own name, Evan of Collapsing Star. As for Natsu, other than the title of Fire Dragon, most people in the magic world do not even know what Natsu's real name is, which is why there are people who are using Natsu's nickname to stir up trouble everywhere. However, it was only a little bit stronger. This kind of rumor still gave Evan a slight headache. I'll give you 10 minutes to gather all the members of the custody enforcement unit and gather at the martial arts arena. Of course, Evan was too lazy to explain to this group of people who believed in the rumors, because immediately this group of people who believed in the rumors would understand everything. Remember, this is the command of the captain. After Evan finished speaking, he did not give these people a chance to talk nonsense and directly turned to leave. Leaving behind a group of confused captains. Evan looked at his watch. Time was money. He was too lazy to explain anything to this group of idiots. Presumably, when he attacked the Dark Magic Council later, as long as he showed enough strength, this group of people would naturally know who he was. In fact, Evan himself did not want to take over the position of the captain of the custody enforcement unit of the Magic Council. He himself planned to act alone because only individual action efficiency was the highest. However, Yajima thought that Makarov had asked Evan to come to the Magic Council to study management so that he could take over Makarov as the guild master of the Fairy Tale Guild in the future. So this position was arranged for Evangelist. At the same time, Yajima also told Evan that the few vice-captains in the Special Custody Enforcement Unit Council were not ordinary people. In the future, these 10 people would probably be from the Magic Council's Force Department. All captains. Therefore, Evan planned to teach the people in front of him a little. In fact, Evan already had a plan in his heart. When the time comes, he will think of a way to plant a few senators in the Magic Council, including Yajima, Crawford, and Seek Rain. As long as more than half of the councillors of the parliament who supported the fairy tale and controlled the captains of the custody enforcement unit, how would this still be a magic review parliament? It was clearly their fairy tale branch. When the time came, with the care of the Magic Council, even if Natsu, the fool who only knew how to make trouble, came to the guild master of Makarov would be much more relaxed. Sigh. Evan sighed when she thought of this. This was all for the sake of the guild members who made trouble. He only helped the guild a little, but he felt a splitting headache. It was hard to imagine how tired Makarov, who worked hard for the guild all day, was. As expected, the position of guild master of the Fair's Tale was not something a normal person could sit on. Only those with great perseverance were qualified.